so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so was seen in the chambers and they were not seen during voting.
If you were in doubt that some money had been circulating, I want you to confound that doubt now. It's still circulating.
It's still circulating.
All the senators in Kenya are known. So if we can name the places where the senators who voted come from, the counties, surely is it then difficult to figure out who it is in person who didn't vote?
Who didn't vote?
No,
and even it doesn't say anything. I mean, you can just say these 4 senators did not vote, right? And that is a fact.
They didn't vote.
They did not vote. That should be a fact. I think this story has, for whatever reason, this story should have told us these are the 4 senators that did not vote.
Are they using this stylistic device called suspense?
Probably. Then
tomorrow morning, you then.
I love the sound effects.
Yes, that's suspense in the air.
And then it comes out.
Yes. Have you ever been to a movie house in the old days where someone has watched a movie and they're sitting behind you? And they're narrating the thing that's going on, and you want to strangle the fellow. And then he says, he's coming to catch you. Stop, don't move. It's like,
what is
movie
it?
Guy. And you're wondering, for heaven's sake, I haven't watched this movie.
Well, concerning this story, it's interesting that Wetangula has said politics was at play and not the law. Senators were carried by emotions. The courts will upset the Senate decision. I didn't talk to any senator, but the trial was grossly flawed and there was no fair justice to the governor.
He raised it even on the floor of the House, actually.
Yes, he did.
Wetangula voted against this motion. And he said, look, guys, the way this issue has been conducted, it's important for us to look at the process. In the very end, truth be told, the former governor of Kiambu, Ferdinand Waitito, may have a case.
He may have a case, but of course, it's just
it depends on how he presents it.
That's very true. But then, of course, all of the sentiments that are being put across from just this, of course, clearly, if they were on the other side, all of these things that we're talking about, political persecution, etc., would not come into play.
Yeah.
Of course, if it was a different decision that had been made. So,
if the same lawyer whose utterances and questions regarding Waitito's matrimony, which has done the rounds on social media, is the same lawyer who's going to represent him in his court case, his chances are dim.
Very dim. Very dim.
Were you there? No.
Answer the question.
No, answer the question.
Were you there?
Were you there?
Okay.
Now, do you have evidence? I can produce the evidence. I mean, you didn't tell me to come with the photos. I can bring photos. No, you don't have, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Really? Anyway, something else that also emerges. Remember the Murkomen 11-member committee? The proposed 11-member committee? The allegations that 11-member committee was just going to ensure that Waitito stays in office came to pass. 6 of the proposed members of that committee voted against this motion.
Very good.
If they were in the committee, 6 of them would have voted against the motion, right? And 5 would have probably voted for the motion. So the motion would have flopped in committee stage.
Well, what I find strange is that people are complaining that politics played a hand in all this.
Yep.
It's a political situation.
So how is it the politics wouldn't have played a hand in this?
It is being discussed in a political arena.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, the politics here, basically, I think we misuse the word politics sometimes.
Yes.
It's not the politics playing a hand. Politics will always play a hand. But it's, it's what Wetangula is saying, not taking it through a proper judicial process.
Actually, that argument, how many lawyers do we have in that Senate?
Many.
The majority of them are lawyers.
Precisely. He's saying that all the other lawyers in the House didn't see this. They didn't understand what
That's
he
why
understood.
he's saying now they looked at political expediency. Only that was what was informing their decision. That's what the allegation is.
And
it was just looking at Tanga versus BBI. That's it.
If we take the example of some of the higher courts in what we refer to as the more developed countries,
yeah,
judges are known by even their biases. you'll know this one is a conservative,
Yep.
this one is a liberal, this one is this. They are known.
Yes.
So when a case goes before them, you can almost predetermine how that person is going to vote
Yes.
because their leaning is known. Now, in this case, why are we suddenly surprised that people have certain leanings and they're politicians? Why are we surprised?
Is it somebody's leaning on belief? For example, if somebody believes that homosexuality is evil, right? That is something strong, and their stand is something. But not because, well, who is it? Is it it's Trump who's in office now? This motion has been brought by so and so. I don't like this person, and therefore I'm going to vote no. I'm going to rule against it. That is different. It's a political expedience here. It's, wait, you're in which camp?
Eric, do you remember for the longest time, there were people in just before, in fact, 2020, 2016, even immediately after 2017, there were people who always said they wanted to do away with the devolution. They wanted to do away with the county system. Do you remember that talk?
Yep.
And it went on and on and on.
Yep.
It was actually very insincere talk because they were either they were either bargaining or they were taking a position that suited a political leaning at that particular point in time. Do you hear anybody talking about doing away with the counties right now? None. The issue is now BBI. That's the talk.
Yes.
Okay? But also alongside this talk of the BBI, you have a situation where you have very distinct camps. The governor's caucus has become a political arm.
Yeah.
Okay? The senators, I believe, have decided to also stamp their authority. They've been called lame ducks for too long. Okay? The MPs, them they stuck to their guns a long time ago. We know exactly where they stand. They stand in any forum that focuses on their self-interest. That one we've understood that.
Yes.
Then you have the cabinet secretaries or the civil servants. They also seem to have a caucus.
They have their own caucus.
Yeah, precisely.
MCAs, speakers.
Yes. Then you have the government. Okay. So now with the BBI, what we're perhaps seeing is a solidifying of all these camps. Because again, in that same news, you're told that there were some frantic calls being made by governors. I guess they say frantic. Some probably were on behalf of Waititu saying, please, gentlemen, consider this guy's case. Others were saying, do what you need to do.
Yes.
Again, it is a political situation, and politicians are doing what politicians know best, looking after their own interest.
Kabisa.
So if indeed it is true that there was a lot of money that did the rounds, it will not be the first time in the history of our country. It's just that
Unfortunately.
yes, previously it was just one house where money had to sort of like travel through. Now, well, the case was in this particular house, so surely, if indeed it is true that money did the rounds, it is not strange because that is also part of our political processes.
It's not
Guy.
surprising. It's not, isn't it, that we've gotten to that point where it's not surprising?
Not
Guy.
got to that point. We got there a long
A while
time
ago.
ago.
I mean, it's,
And we've
you
normalized. The
expect
problem
it.
is that we've normalized.
And you
Yes.
expected actually that money definitely would have changed hands in a process like this. It would be. In fact, we've gone so far that the surprising thing would be if that there was no money changing hands.
One of our listeners sent a comment yesterday. You know, when you're talking about getting into utopia for about 5 minutes or 10 minutes, they said, you know what, this is what it appears to be, that the right thing is now utopian. We live in dystopia, where we have totally normalized the
distortion is what is normal.
It's normal, exactly.
Everything else is what has become normal for us. And we live like, it's the right thing to do. This is...
It's not right.
It isn't.
It's money exchanges hands. So how much was it this time? And we move on.
You know,
we expected that this was going to happen.
Even if indeed Governor Waititu is actually rightly accused, if his case cannot be proven according to the law, it doesn't matter how guilty we may think he is.
Yeah.
That man should be set free. That if the law isn't followed, or there is reason to doubt that the law was followed, whatever it is our judicial system allows, then he should be set free.
Be set free.
Another case should be preferred against him with proper processes and adequate evidence.
Some good news, though, came out of the judiciary yesterday.
Yes.
They were listening to the show, and when we were discussing the matter that they should allow the people of Kiambu to have a substantive governor, they listened. So, as expected, Babaya went to court, challenging the impeachment process.
Of course
and
he
of
did.
course arguing that it was not properly done. And he was asking the courts to put an injunction on anything that happens. Do not allow a new governor to be sworn in. The court said, no, you come, let's listen to you. Anything else, wachana na. What doesn't concern you doesn't concern you, okay? Just bring your case.
Your case.
You just deal. Let's deal with what's your issue. Yeah. Anything else, the people of Kiambu, the deputy governor, assumption of office, that is different. So that's going to happen. Now, of course, it was expected that the new governor would be sworn in yesterday.
That didn't happen.
It turns out that the whole issue again, process, trying to circumvent process will come in costly. So they had not gazetted it. They had not said this is going to happen. They had not formed a committee on assumption of office. They had not followed the due process. And they were told, look, guys, you need to ensure that you do this. The judge that had been earmarked to go and conduct the process said, there are things that you need to check these boxes.
Before I actually arrive here.
Check these boxes, then I'll come. And now, the Kiambu County Assembly claims that it has checked the boxes. So they have issued a gazette notice saying that the swearing in is going to happen today between 10 a.m. and noon.
Well, we'll see, won't we?
Let's see.
We will see.
Let us see, indeed, if this is going to happen. It's going to be interesting, of course, to see whether the new governor will take office and what he does with that after he takes office. And what then happens should Babayao win his case and say that he was procedurally kicked out of office. So what happens? Do we annul one oath and reissue an oath to the old governor? This is interesting.
Actually, our
pretty
law
interesting.
And our constitution being tested. Now we see how our laws function when they're in operation.
Jurisprudence.
Very good, very good, very good.
We have invited the former governor of Kiambu, this is William Kabogo, to come in and tell us about what next for Kiambu, what he sees. I mean, he's a voter in Kiambu, so he's one of the residents of Kiambu who have not had a governor for quite a while. So between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m., tune in, William Kabogo in studio. Good morning. It's 17 minutes past 6. Tell us about the weather, shall you?
Spice FM, Nakuru. The weather with Spice FM.
All right, let's see what's looking like today. Holding strong at 16 degrees in Nairobi with highs of 24 and lows of 16 today. There is a possibility of showers later on in the day. But for right now, it's clear with some cloudy weather later. It's 26 degrees in Mombasa and possibility of thunderstorms later on today with a low of 25 and a warm high of 32. In Kisumu, currently at 20 degrees, we're looking at mostly cloudy conditions with a possibility of showers and a low of 19 today. Looking at Nakuru, it's a bit chilly this morning at 14 degrees, partly cloudy conditions and a chance of thunderstorms. In Nyeri at 14 degrees right now, we'll have a high of 24, partly cloudy conditions with a possibility of rain later. Finally, rounding it up in Malindi with 27 degrees currently, mostly cloudy today, possibility of showers with a high of 31 and a low of 26.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
And the live streams are up. www.spicefm.co.ke. Facebook, we're streaming on Spice FM KE. We are also streaming on YouTube, Spice FM KE. And Twitter, at Spice FM KE. Taking a look at what's been covered in the headlines. What do you have in the nation?
Well, so front page of the nation, an anatomy of the power struggle is what we see today. And of course, there's cat fights in the presidency. Uhuru and Ruto have hitherto hidden the fierce fight for the control of the country behind bonhomie bear hugs and smiles with clenched teeth. But in the impeachment of the former governor of Kiambu, during which the leader of majority voted against his own conference, the masks were pulled off. So it seems like now, before when it was in pocket fighting, we now have an open brawl, according to what the nation is talking about. So it's no longer hidden, gloves off, or in this case, gloves on, and the fight is real. And it's political games, of course, that led to the Waititu ouster. And of course, it's saying that now sides have been drawn as far as this is concerned. So again, pointing to the fact that it's really an Uhuru Ruto fight as opposed to a Waititu expulsion.
It has nothing to do with the people of Kiambu.
No. Of course not. Why?
This is somebody else's war.
Right.
It's a proxy. Okay.
Okay, so a bigger thing now that probably we need to give a little bit more attention. I think we gave this quite some attention yesterday. But unfortunately, what we are hearing now, what we are seeing, is that the country is on edge. Are you on edge? As test results on virus yet to be released, of course, the young man that has been quarantined at the Kenyatta National Hospital was still at grave risk, even as the country anxiously awaits preliminary results from a patient suspected to be infected with the highly contagious coronavirus. The Ministry of Health yesterday tried to reassure the public that the situation was under control. However, it elicited little confidence as health experts said the government was not doing enough to protect its citizens.
Okay.
And of course, we have outcry from a lot of Kenyans who are in China saying that something needs to be done to get them out. Since they're not able to move themselves, there should be some country-to-country talks about how they can actually get their citizens out, because quite a number of other nationals have been evacuated from Wuhan. Cabinet Secretary Cicely Karaoke said the results were yet to be processed. Meanwhile, the patient, who is said to be in stable condition, admitted with flu-like symptoms, will remain in isolation. As of yesterday, everybody was still waiting to know the results, even as she insisted that the country had the capacity to carry out the tests. And I quote, "The fact that we sent a set of samples does not mean we lack the capacity. We sent the samples to South Africa for a second opinion." And health experts, interestingly enough, have faulted the CS's statement, saying that presently there is no capacity locally or on the continent to carry out the tests for the coronavirus. And this is coming from the Lancet Group, of course, of Laboratories Chief Consultant Ahmed Kalebi. And he said, although China shared the genetic sequence of the novel coronavirus with the world, African countries would still need to rely on labs outside the continent to test any suspected case. Just do that sound effect again, CT.
Ta-dang.
What is alarming about the coronavirus? Well, one is that, you see, for those who have the capacity, it takes 24 hours for a proper diagnosis to actually take place. Now, with SARS would take 4 days before you would actually arrive at a reasonable, a result that you would consider credible. Now, what makes it even more alarming and why there's a hoo-ha, well, pun intended here, Wuhan, well, I'm now referring to the place
Got it.
where the outbreak is actually bang in the center of China. No pun intended.
Right?
Yes. And it is 4 hours away from literally all parts of China by speed train. Now, this speed train travels around 300 kilometers per hour.
Yep.
Okay? It is spread by fluid. It is not airborne, just so that people understand. Okay? Droplets of it. Now, again, this is the Chinese New Year, and over 300 million people are in transit. Now, these are the things that make this particular problem as big as it is. 300 million people are very many people.
Yes.
And if they're moving all over the place.
Yeah, not a joke.
Okay? So if you consider what's happening, and right now as of this morning, the 170 figure we spoke of had risen to 200. SARS claimed 300 lives. Okay? Now, 18 countries have also reported that they have cases of the coronavirus. So what is alarming is the speed with which it is spreading, how easy it is for people to contact it,
Yep.
and that despite all the efforts that are being made to actually contain it, it is still spreading. So long as you hear, even if it's just one case somewhere, it's one case somewhere, meaning it's been reported.
Right.
Now, what about cases that exist and have not been reported? Again, if you listen to the news, international news, they tell you that even in the very place where this outbreak was, even with the caution that is being taken, you will find the occasional person dropping in the streets, meaning they were already infected.
Yes.
Yes. So there is reason for this alarm. But when we talk about tests being taken to South Africa, this isn't new. On this continent, one of the things that may not be obvious or may not be known is that when it comes to matters of health, South Africa for the longest time have had the highest standards that are considered and accepted internationally when it comes to, say, lab works and testing. Even with HIV, when you wanted to confirm a test, if you wanted to understand, for confirmatory purposes that were beyond any doubt, many such tests were taken to South Africa. And the reason is because they have labs that are universally recognized as being a standard bearer, meaning the sort of lab which has the standards which, whatever results come out of that lab, it is considered to be accurate. Yes. Our CS may not be telling us an untruth here.
We don't have that capacity.
That, not quite. We don't really. And with this particular outbreak, no, we do not.
No, we don't.
7 hours ago, the World Health Organization declared a public health emergency of international concern over the global outbreak of the coronavirus. This was at a press conference by the WHO head, that man from Ethiopia, right? He's called Theodros something. So he says this is a big thing. This is not something we can really take lightly. The number of emergencies that have been declared previously of international concern include the H1N1 in 2009. This is the bird flu virus. The polio outbreak in 2014. 2014 again, the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. In 2016, the Zika virus outbreak. In 2019, the Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And now we have the coronavirus in 2020 being declared a major international concern. It says what we have is we are seeing there are very many cases of this outbreak emerging. There are now 98 coronavirus cases in 18 countries outside China, including 8 cases of human-to-human transmission in 4 countries: Germany, Japan, Vietnam, and the USA. This is Dr. Tedros was saying. So we have all those cases outside the China, and now it's getting into human-to-human transmission. So far, we have not seen any deaths outside China, for which we must all be grateful. Although these numbers are still relatively small compared to the number of cases in China, we must all act together now to limit further spread. We don't know what sort of damage this coronavirus could do if it were to spread in a country with a weaker health system. We must act now to help countries prepare for that possibility. We're in that bracket.
Part of the reason why this becomes a major concern, remember, if you don't do that, consider a situation where there's an outbreak in Kenya and Kenyans are traveling all over the world.
Yep.
If you replicate that in other countries,
Yeah.
you have a serious disaster in your hands.
Right.
Yes. And you can't tell.
You can't tell who's gone where, who was in contact with whom.
You can't.
You
Especially
really
when it
can't
goes to
tell.
human to human.
Unless you begin,
can't.
and you just try to imagine for a minute what would happen if you have 30 people on a plane, right? And everybody is going to a different destination.
Yeah.
If you had one person who was in contact, or one person who was infected, as it were, and then was in contact with all of these people, and all of these people are then going to further destinations that you really don't know. Imagine just the trace elements in 24 hours, trying to then pinpoint where each individual went, whom they may have been in contact
And
with.
who was patient zero on what flight?
Exactly. It's a nightmare.
It's completely chaotic. Right now, well, apart from those 4 cases of human to human, you see, all the others are coming from the fact that there has been everybody else who's infected outside China has some real correlation to Wuhan. They were in Wuhan at some point. Now, those ones in America, in Germany, in Japan, if they started spreading within Japan.
One of the things that has also happened, medical research has fast-forwarded. These processes where you determine what an antidote could be or can be, or everything is being done to ensure that whatever it is that can be used to fight it is actually being done.
Yeah.
But the problem is these things take time and processes. To the point where you can actually test whatever you have on human beings, it has to go through certain processes. It doesn't matter how much you fast forward it. There's a limit beyond which you cannot. And the Australians are fighting. In the UK, people have put it this way. The world of research has galvanized its energies to try and see what they can do. And when they do that, it tells you this thing is far more dangerous than you actually think.
It is crazy. By the time the World Health Organization, Dr. Tedros says, I was in China, and I can commend the government for what it's doing there. But let's all be aware that this thing is spreading. We already have cases outside China. We already have cases of human-to-human transmission. We are seeing these things happening, and we don't know. If it went to one country that cannot contain it, basically saying, if it went to Africa, if it went home to Africa, then this is it. It becomes another global epidemic.
And you know, most epidemics have actually been contained within the areas that it first occurred.
Yeah.
But we are in the 21st century, and everyone can go anywhere in the shortest time possible.
What they like, yes.
So, yes, it is a problem in the making.
We keep praying, fingers crossed, that the test results from the patient who's been quarantined at KNH return negative, that we don't have a case of this virus, coronavirus, in Kenya yet. And also, let's keep praying that all the efforts are going to be put in place to ensure that this thing is fought wherever it is. Talk of airlines stopping operations. Of course, there was some fake news that spread last night that Ethiopian Airlines had done the same. Ethiopian Airlines itself said China is a very important source market for us. In fact, even for Ethiopians, traveling to China and from China, we cannot really stop it right now. We are still monitoring the situation. 6:30, good morning. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then the conversation continues.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
Right, so it's Friday and we're coming to the end of the month. So you can imagine the nightmare that is on Mombasa Road already. All the way from Nalongo, it is a nightmare. Of course, everybody's asking. Something needs to be done. People were on the road as early as 4:30 today to try and beat this particular traffic. And as if that is not bad enough, we've had an accident right around GM with a truck and, some other vehicles. So that is going to make the snarl up even worse. Let's look at what other parts of the city where it's making it a little bit easier for people. Mombasa Road, of course, we said that is on a category of its own. Thika Road, where we're coming off from the Garden City Mall, not so much traffic right now. It is actually it's moving smoothly, slowly, but it's moving anyway. Coming into town from Wayaki Way is not so bad, but there is some traffic as you try to approach the Museum Hill roundabout and the interchange there. Coming into the city will not be so bad. We'll take a look at what's happening in other parts, but for right now, what's giving up those vibes is Mombasa Road. You can use the eastern and southern bypasses as a way to get out. We'll let you know. Spice FM KE is where you can reach us on Twitter or give us a call on 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
In the Situation Room this and every morning, CT Muga, Ndu Oko and Eric Latif. We're broadcasting from Nairobi on 94.4. We're in Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We are worldwide on www.spicefm.co.ke. We are also live streaming on Facebook on SpiceFMKE. We are on Twitter at SpiceFMKE. You can find our live stream as well on YouTube, SpiceFMKE. Top story this morning, it appears that Mombasa is unrelenting.
It would appear
Wants
so.
to be in the headlines constantly. So today, the headline, of course, talks about the fact that we are soon not going to have some officers. These are critical officers,
Chief
right?
officers.
Chief officers.
Yes, and others.
Page 21 of The Standard. Anxiety in Joho's cabinet as term of 17 officers end. Officials allay fears say the contracts could be renewed today to ensure continued delivery of service. Could be renewed today. Final day. There is anxiety over operations of the county government as 17 county chief officers leave office today at the end of their 2-year contract. The absence of a county public service board to hire the new officers has compounded the confusion of the devolved unit. Mombasa has had no board since 2018, and the process of reconstituting it or vetting new county executive committee members has been delayed because members of the county assembly have been on recess since December. Now, Governor Ali Hassan Joho, who has been blamed for the widening paralysis within the county administration, has not commented on the matter since it began mid-last November, when his entire cabinet left office at the expiry of a 2-year contract. Mombasa County has 20 chief officers, 17 of whose contracts are expiring today.
Of interest, when the county secretary was a certain gentleman by the name of Dennis Lair was contacted, he said, things are in place. We are in full control of the situation. There is no vacuum in the county government. We will issue an official communication tomorrow.
That is today. Tomorrow of today or
Tomorrow was yesterday, so the tomorrow is now today.
Uh-huh.
And as he says this, it's against the backdrop of CSs, what are the CECs?
CECs.
Have they been appointed?
Nope.
So they haven't been appointed. We have a case where 20, chief officers are out of a job.
17, to be precise.
Actually, no.
17 of the 20.
17 of the 20. 20. Round it off to the closest.
To the closest.
To the closest nth.
20. Okay? Now, and this is what the public is being told. There is no vacuum.
Things are in place.
Of course there is.
Chill, what's your problem?
Yes. As you can see, we have only 3 chief officers in place. The others are not in place. We don't have CECs, but there is no vacuum.
The contracts of chief officers do not end at the same time. Those that end tomorrow, that is today, will be sorted before close of business. There is no vacuum in government. The county chief officers are Jafar Mohsen, Abdurrahman Mbarak. There are many. Last week, Joho named a partial cabinet after he sent home all members in November last year. Some civil society organizations have threatened to challenge the legality of the partial cabinet in court. The CECs who are retained are Mariam Mbaruk of Finance, Hazel Koitaba of Health, Dr. Godfrey Nato of Environment, and Tawfiq Balala, who was moved from the Transport Department to Water and Sanitation. So basically, he renamed 4, he brought back 4. Said, you 4, come.
Allow me to actually ask a simple question. The complement of CECs that a county must have, is it something that is subject to debate or is it something that is mandatory?
What?
The number of CECs that a county must have.
Well, the CEC can have up to 10. I mean, like
The county.
The county executive shall comprise of the governor, the deputy governor, and up to 10 cabinet CECs.
Up to 10. So if you have 4, it is okay.
I guess now you look at the quorum again of the county executive.
Okay. Was procedure followed?
I don't know. I think in this particular
Do we
case...
have a service board?
You see, in this particular case, it's only that they had been given a 2-year contract, all right? But they had already been vetted by the assembly. They had been approved by the assembly. They were serving. So it's for the governor to extend their term if he so wishes. Or if he wants to bring in a new one, it's just like if he wants to bring in a new one, he wants to appoint Eric Latif to be the CEC for, let's see what's missing here. Give me one portfolio.
Health.
Health.
Public
There is
services.
health. There's Hazel Kuitaba. Yes, public service. So if he wants Eric Latif to be the CEC for public service, I have to go through vetting in the county assembly. But I'm guessing that these 4, because they were already in office, they had already been vetted and approved, they may not require to do that. However, I'm not sure because you have given them a 2-year contract. The contract has expired.
Has expired.
Officially.
Yeah.
who signs a new contract? Is it the Public Service Board or is it the governor?
It's difficult
Who
because
has
now
hired them?
there is no public service board in place
Yes.
to do this anyway.
Actually, you are allowed. You see, if you reappoint them within, I think, a 3-month period, the governor has that particular mandate. But
3-month period to the point of expiry.
actually, after expiry,
After expiry,
Within
for 3
3
months.
you are given a time span within which they don't need to go through that vetting process. But if that period expires,
Then they must
have
be
to
vetted afresh.
yes. And if you do the maths, November, December, January, 3 months.
3 months don't finish, Abby. Okay. So now, in this case, what we're looking at, of course, then is it seems that there's an attitude or reluctance
No.
to kind of put
It
this
isn't
in place.
reluctance. It isn't
Or-
reluctance.
There's a strategy in play.
It's impunity.
There's a strategy being rolled out
No,
here.
it isn't a
You know, I was
strategy.
looking back and seeing who's performing. What do I need? These are people. If you just actually look at them, Mariam Baruch, Hazel Koitaba, Godfrey Naito, and Tafik Balala. Some of them, like Hazel Koitaba, has been in Joho's cabinet from day one in 2013.
It is fine. It is fine. My question really was, and perhaps we are not best placed to answer this question. And if the former governor of Kiambu comes, is something we can ask him.
Yep.
When you are given a certain compliment and it is made public that you are to have up to 10 CECs, it means it is understood that the county needs those departments to be operational for the county to function optimally.
Yeah.
Now, you don't have the 10. In fact, you have less than 5. Okay. Then you have the chief officers, who we believe are the ones who are the operational people who manage these things. You have yet another situation with them. In this case, it's not 4. You have 3 working, 17 are not in place. And somebody tells you that there is no vacuum. So what we are being asked to believe is what he says,
Yeah.
and
ignore
not
completely
and
what you can see and
ignore
hear.
reality.
ignore
Yeah,
completely what
completely.
it is that we can see.
Exactly. And I mean, of course, clearly there's an attempt to allay fear or allay any kind of suspicion or speculation. But the reaction that you give
No,
gives
you're
the
heightening
total
it.
opposite in terms of a reaction. If anything, it is being heightened. And people are saying, oh my goodness, what is going on here? We've been thrown into a mess in Mombasa. And if something is not done about it, but then here is somebody saying, oh, everything
Things
is
are in
okay,
control.
really. I
Chill.
mean, we have an entire day, right? The business day has not even begun. By the end of the day tomorrow, everything will be okay. Really? How long has this public service board not been in place? And then you're saying in a day all of this will be sorted out? Come on, folks. Even if I take the words of Senator Murkomen, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck.
It's probably a dog.
Abiu, at this rate. What they would like you to believe in this case that it is a dog or
Yes,
a camel.
exactly. And you can see this is a
It's a
duck.
duck.
Yes.
Come on.
Relax. It can't fly.
Ask
This one is not flying, that's for sure.
But I think a more pertinent question arises. What actually is happening in Mombasa County? Because during Governor Joe's first term, we didn't have
We
these
didn't see
issues.
this kind of
No,
stuff.
we didn't. What's going
And
on?
it isn't that the governor is new to politics or is new to the job of being governor. There's hardly anything we're discussing here that he doesn't understand better than we do.
Of course.
And that the import of which he also doesn't understand. So what actually is happening? What is holding this whole process? There's something happening clearly. Now, that is the question I would ask. And what is it? Because for someone who is in such a position, and remember, we talked about this a while back, and we were reading in the papers that there was a complaint. It was 2 weeks ago that the governor even no longer lives in Mombasa. That he commutes to his office every once in a while by
From a
helicopter.
neighboring county.
Yes, I'm not sure that this is true or not. But if it is, then I would ask.
Well, but if he goes to work in the office,
The going to the work in the office wasn't even the issue.
so that's fine.
It's infrequently.
Oh, okay.
He's hardly ever
the
seen.
frequency
Okay.
with which
Yes,
he's
and
seen
when
in the
he's seen,
office.
it's once in a while. So
Checks in, checks out.
yes, and if that is true, then one could argue that the beloved governor of Mombasa County has problems, and it has nothing to do with his being governor, because he is governor.
Yeah. And he's not getting any kind of political backlash. For example, you cannot see any kind of backlash coming from the MCs. The county assembly,
He's not being fought.
No, there have
Yeah.
been no questions even as to what's happening.
even in
There's
the last
been no
government,
push for
the county
this to be
assembly
done.
of Mombasa County was actually one of those few counties that had uniform assembly. All members in the county assembly were ODM. The governor was ODM. He's the deputy party leader of ODM. So really, there were no factions within the assembly and between the assembly and the executive. Same thing is still applying even today. He does not face opposition or any kind of grumblings from the county assembly. So what exactly is happening in Mombasa? This is a very good question that you're raising.
And remember, there was a gentleman called Blackwater who called in yesterday and he raised an alarm. He said, you know something?
Yeah.
We have a situation in Mombasa you guys need to talk about. He says land rates have gone up by 500%.
500%.
Yes, 500%. He said permits have gone up by 200%. Liquor license by 150. Parking moved from 100 shillings to 200 shillings. And according to Blackwater, people are no longer even parking in town.
In town, exactly.
Yes. Now, again, all these increases. Why? And this is against a backdrop when the economy of Mombasa is suffering enormously because of the SGR saga. Remember, the CFSs employed very many people.
Yeah.
With what we currently have, that employment is approaching zero.
We've had job losses there.
Huge.
Yeah, huge job losses.
Then there is the transport industry, specifically ferrying containers and goods from the port of Mombasa up country. With this particular issue of the SGR, that has also suffered.
Yeah.
Now, these are people who contributed to the economy of Mombasa. There is no income, you cannot contribute. And then you accompany this by hiking the cost of living, because this is what you've done. You've hiked the cost of living in Mombasa. Now, surely, for someone who seemed to have been in touch and someone who had seemed to have a handle on things, and all these things happening around, everything about it.
It begs the question, and I think we could not be further from, a proper position if we didn't ask what was going on. Because if you're coming from the premise that everything seemed to have been in order, and you seem to have had a handle on things, and now things definitely seem to be falling apart, you have to ask what's going on.
Well, it's a valid question, and usually the answer isn't really far from our noses. It's just that we can't see it.
We can smell it.
Yes.
It's 14 minutes to 7 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. The conversation continues. Of course, you can also join in the conversation throughout the show on 0719 012 600. Remember, the live streams are up. Spice FM KE on Facebook and Spice FM KE on Twitter, as well as YouTube and www.spicefm.co.ke.
Spice FM, Malindi. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The county executive is out of touch with the people of Mombasa, and whether the people of Mombasa are actually getting service. So we do not have a fully constituted cabinet. We are now seeing that most of the PSs in that cabinet, the chief officers, 17 of them, their term expires today. We don't have a county public service board. Remember when we were discussing Kiambu and saying the people of Kiambu are suffering because they don't have a substantive governor. In Mombasa, governor, deputy governor in place.
County
No challenge.
County secretary in place.
County secretary in place. County speaker in place.
place.
Assembly in place.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Then we get a call of a resident of Mombasa, Blackwater, who tells us, again, what percentages of these things are going?
Land rates 500%, permits 200%, liquor license 150, parking has gone from 100 to 200.
What is happening in Mombasa?
Why don't we draw a parallel even as we seek to answer this particular question? If you look at the utterances of the communication, the gentleman, according to the newspaper report, somebody called Richard Chacha, he actually argued that some of these departments have been consolidated. So it means that he's explaining why it is that you find fewer CECs. That would make sense.
All right.
But he hasn't elaborated to tell us which ones. Okay? But the parallel...
They clearly haven't been consolidated to 3. 17 are leaving office today at the expiry of their official contract.
This falls in...
Even if you consolidate all 20, surely you can't bring them to 3.
You know, this falls in the category of something I want to talk about later on. And this is how we spoke about utterances which essentially were lies by public servants and politicians.
Yep.
Then there's a second category of utterances which mean next to nothing. When you actually hear them, it sounds like someone is telling you something. Then when you actually pause and ask, what exactly am I being told? Because there is a word that was used by the county secretary and the communications director. There is no vacuum. Why do they keep talking about a vacuum?
Vacuums.
Why? Unfortunately, it often means that there is a vacuum.
Exactly.
They know there is a vacuum. And so they keep Freudian slipping.
Yeah.
They keep throwing in the word vacuum when all they needed to say was, it's a work in progress.
We're working on
it,
something.
and we will inform you when
in
we have
due course.
concluded the exercise.
Shikenan.
We will not argue. It is their exercise.
Yep.
But you keep definitively no vacuum.
So there's
the
a
other
vacuum.
gentleman, no vacuum.
So there's
Why?
a vacuum.
But the parallel I wanted to draw was this. If you consider one of the things that we saw in this country during the time of President Moi's presidency,
Yeah.
was something unique. We didn't have a vice president for the longest time. To the point where you actually asked, but
Do we need
do we really need a vice president? Every ministry had a minister. There was no vacuum in this case. Vacuum meaning there was no gap. Every docket had somebody occupying it. Okay? Now, the next time we had such a situation, modern times, was in Nairobi County, when we didn't have a deputy governor. But we went further. We also didn't have certain CECs over a period of time.
Yep.
But it wasn't a case where terms had expired and there was no replacement. And it wasn't as though 7 of them were removed. No. You had people acting in their capacity, in those positions, and the chief officers were in place. So, there is no situation that you can actually compare dot by dot with the situation in Mombasa. There is none in this country.
Of course, the question is arising. Then you're asking yourself, are these CECs necessary to get the work done? And at the end of the day, this is the thing. And that's the answer to that question is that, yes, they are the ones essentially who run the services of the county. They are the ones who basically make things happen. So if they're not there, there are certain things that are not happening within Mombasa. And we can see the direct result of this with some of the complaints that we got yesterday. A rise in prices, unavailability of certain services. And essentially, even if you have the machinery in place, the fuel to run the engine is what now does not exist.
Yep.
And so that's the question that has come in. So really, where is the problem? The problem is this car is not moving. Mombasa really is not moving. Services are not being,
And the
delivered.
driver is
Actually,
telling you, don't
is,
worry,
the
we
driver
will
is
arrive.
saying it's okay, we'll get there. But when there's no fuel, it's okay.
We
Actually,
shall
you're
arrive
being
on
told
time.
the message is that it is moving.
Yes.
There is no vacuum.
What's your issue?
You're saying, okay, you only have 3 chief officers out of a complement of 20. Says, no, there's no vacuum. Says, okay, according to my maths, there are 17 positions that haven't been
Have
filled.
not been filled.
There is no vacuum. Okay, we need to redefine this term vacuum. shouldn't we?
Vacuum should have a new meaning.
I think we missed out on something. hasn't
maybe
it?
we are not getting the
The
meaning of
meaning
this.
evolved, and somewhere along the line, we were not.
So now what we basically are saying is that there are no people who would look at the complaints of people like Blackwater.
Actually,
Exactly. Who would
know-
you take it to?
well,
Who's going to deal with it? If the cabinet, okay, now we have 4 who've been reappointed, so we can say that Joho can constitute a cabinet meeting and they can discuss some of these issues, but still at the same
the
time.
representatives of the people in any such setup are the assembly members.
Yes.
Now, in this case, all these assembly members belong to one party. One.
Yeah.
So, the likelihood is that they'll have one voice. And if we go by Kenyan politics, the dictates of Kenyan politics, if you oppose the governor, who himself is the deputy party leader of ODM, you are opposing the party.
Yes, you are.
That is what it will be seen like. Treachery. So the likelihood of there being complaints from the county assembly, it's unlikely that it's unlikely we'll hear voices coming from.
Remember, actually, the county assembly is the one that approved these hiking rates. Right?
Yes.
It is the county assembly that went and approved and said, all right, sawa, how much do you want it to go up by? 500%? Good.
Done.
How much parking? 100%? Sawa. What else is there? That's land rates, 500%.
Yes, permits,
Permits.
liquor
Liquor
licenses.
everything go up. It's fine. It's okay. Let it happen. So Blackwater has no recourse. You can't go and complain to the assembly, your MC, and say, this has gone up.
They're the ones who put it there in the first place. So,
They
at the
approved
end
it.
of the day, they approved it. So, of course, the question is, look, it's clear that there's a problem, and it's clear that nobody's opening their mouths to speak about it. Whether they, realize that there is one or not, they're not going to open their mouths to speak about it, and there's no one to take your recourse.
What
who
then I
provide
would ask
recourse.
is, because clearly there is an unspoken of a fight, there is a tussle somewhere.
Somewhere, yes.
And that this tussle involves the governor. Who is he tussling with? Because it seems to be an unresolved issue. And it's playing out in the arena of decision-making and appointments.
There's somebody who the governor is.
Or there's some people, or there's some powers. Who does he refer to? Who does he confer with when he makes his decisions? Or so if of course we
his
are all,
kitchen cabinet has left him.
or if he confers with himself, then
He needs to have a conversation with himself then in this
yes,
case.
or we could
in terms
he
of
has,
what
he-
needs to happen.
well, he has internal conflict.
And he needs to see someone about that, clearly.
Yes.
Let's wait and see what unfolds in Mombasa. Of course, the tenure of those 17 chief officers expires today. Let's see if they'll be renewed or whatever happens. We'll have follow-up on that. In the next hour, we'll be joined by Mr. Calvin Mogani. He is the chairperson of the International Commission of Jurists, Kenya. That's ICJ, Kenya. The first question, of course, will be, what is ICJ, Kenya? Well, that's what we're going to ask him. But as we conclude the hour, there's a story that's coming out of Nigeria here. 3 Nigerian stowaways land in Ghana instead of Spain.
I'm telling you, this thing try and get away is a problem. Even
Land,
where you want
what
to go.
means were they traveling to Spain?
They entered the plane. They were
Plane.
stowaways.
No.
They were stowaways.
A ship.
Yes, see? Stowaway.
Yeah. So the 3 stowaways who've been since been placed in custody had boarded the vessel from Nigeria in hope of going to Spain in seek of greener pastures. The 3 Nigerian stowaways, one is 32, the other one is 28, and one is 26, were reported to have sneaked on board the vessel MV Unity from Apapa Port of Nigeria with the conviction that the vessel was heading towards Spain. Unfortunately, this vessel was heading towards Ghana to discharge some general goods at the port of Tema, where the suspects were seen hiding in a small place and apprehended. So unfortunate. I mean, I just feel sorry for these guys.
All they had to do was look.
You
my
wanted
friend.
to go to Spain, then you find yourself in the next door.
Well,
No,
at
you
least
should have read the.
they moved out of Nigeria. At least they made some progress.
And now
they're
they're
going
in jail.
back.
Now they're in jail.
And then they'll be taken back to
even more
Nigeria.
progress, yes. So you could say that they've had a round trip.
It's a round trip. Oh, no. Calvin Mugani, good morning.
Morning to you, sir. How are you doing?
Salama kabisa. Thank you very much for joining us.
Welcome.
Now, of course, we'll ask you about ICJ and the work that you do, and then, of course, we'll go into the conversation. Among the main issues that we'll be discussing today is the BBI. ICJ has collaborated with other organizations in coming up with a report, which raises some questions on the BBI, the process of BBI, how much it's costing the taxpayer. We'll have all that conversation. But before we go to that, there's also the issue of what's happening in our devolution process. You can see the county assemblies. Kiambu, there's one. Now we're discussing Mombasa, where we're saying, look, CEC is not in place. CO's tenure expiring. County Public Service Board not in office. What do you make of that?
There is so much that we have not done on devolution, and I think what we need to have a conversation on is to strengthen the institution of the county government. We have done so much about the central government. The national government has got certain structures that have been put in place, but the legislation that we have set for the county government is not adequate to properly ensure the governments are properly in place. Let me start with what has been very stormy is the question of the deputy governors and how the appointments are being done or replacements. There is no proper law that is there to ensure that we don't have that kind of vacuum that we have had in Nairobi County. And we need to have a proper transitional process which has not been put in place. Also, the process of appointment of the public service boards at the county level. What we have is they are more like ad hoc committees which operate at the whim of the legislature, the county level, and the county executive. And we need to have a board that is similar to the Public Service Board with the proper tenure that is properly protected.
Right.
Because we tend to think that the county government is operating at a very low level. It does not have to have a
It doesn't need these things.
Yes. So, there is so much that was never put in place because we assumed the county governments were like the old local government, not a government in itself.
Kelvin, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, we'll continue this conversation. Let's get to the top of the hour where we take a look at traffic and then we continue. Kelvin Mogeni is the chairman of the International Commission of Jurists, Kenya. He is here with us. Good morning, 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, getting right into traffic. Our Waiyaki Way jam started at Kabete, but it's moving slowly this morning. We also see heightened levels of fog on the same Waiyaki Way this morning. Please exercise caution. Visibility is extremely low, so you might want to use your fog lights and make sure that you approach the area with caution. The roads are slippery and it's quite heavy this morning. Thika Road is now into normal conditions where we have bumper-to-bumper traffic all the way from the Safari Park Hotel, and that's snaking slowly down towards town. Juja Road near the Air Force, of course, is at a gridlock. Traffic on Langata Road right now already at a standstill. Let's see how that opens up in a short while. You can, at the moment, still use the southern and eastern bypasses when coming off of Mombasa Road and find your way round into the CBD and onwards if that's where you're going. Gong Road not so bad this morning as you approach City Mortuary roundabout and then trying to get into town left or right. It should be fine at the moment. We'll let you know of more as we go along. Spice FM KE on Twitter, or give us a call if you see something that we need to spread the word about. Let's keep folks moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Yes, of course. 2.5 minutes past 7 o'clock. Thank you very much for tuning into Spice FM and choosing The Situation Room as the only way to start your day. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We're live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. This is the first and only audio-visual radio station in the Republic and in fact in the region. So you can watch us on Facebook as well, Spice FM KE. You can also watch us on Twitter. We are live streaming at Spice FM KE and on YouTube at Spice FM KE. Broadcasting to Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu. We're in Nakuru 96.0. We're in Eldoret 96.7, Nyeri 90.9 and Malindi 97.7. On the hot seat this morning, Kelvin Mogeni. He is the chairperson of the International Commission of Jurists, Kenya. Kelvin, what is ICJ, Kenya? What is it and what exactly do you do?
ICJ is a membership organization. The members are drawn from the bar, that is the lawyers. We got the judges from the judiciary. We got members from the prosecution side. So it's a cross-section of membership organization from all persons who profess the legal profession. We even have student members who join the ICJ. So ICJ, generally, we are jurists. As jurists, what we do, we have, for example, at ICJ, we have thematic areas that we deal with. We are a human rights organization. We are human rights defenders. We also work towards ensuring that there is proper governance in our institutions. We also have a program on international justice which we work on to ensure that there is a proper articulation of international justice, and the criminal mechanisms, the legal resources and all that. We also have programs around access to justice. That is, we try to ensure that justice is properly drawn into the public and the people on the ground. So all these issues that we deal with, we do advocacy. We tend to do sector support process. We offer technical support both to government sectors, the private sectors, and many others. For example, we also have, when you talk about governance, we tend to ensure that the right issues, for example, in mining, in resource extraction industries, proper information is given to the public. If you deal with the extraction of issues in Kwale or the oil in Turkana, all these issues, when we deal with them, is a question of ensuring that the public are assured that the contracts are entered into either by the government or with the private entities or the public are properly articulated. And we have information on that, so that information can be shared with the public. And of late, also, when you're dealing with the question of the right to information, under the Article 35, we did make a demand actually around the BBI, and there are several issues that we had raised, which we required the government to respond, which they have not done so far. But maybe I could repeat that on those issues and why we believe that there is some kind of secrecy that is not properly shared with the public, because when we deal with the questions of finances, the Constitution provides that there must be proper public participation to ensure that the finances are properly, used. Our resources are not wasted. If you look at paragraph 131 of the BBI report, it states that many Kenyans told the task force that it is the lure of illicit financial gain through the holding of elected or appointed position that drives much of the aggressive and negative ethnicization and even militarization of political competition.
Yes.
The majority will agree that the stability and success of Kenyan leadership at every level and branch of government depends a great deal on the integrity and transparency of the Kenyan leadership. It is therefore imperative that for this provision in the Constitution to have enough teeth to shape the membership and behavior of the leadership in Christ. So that what we're asking here is that there must be integrity. As they say themselves,
Yes.
you cannot talk about there being integrity in a process when your own creation is not properly anchored in integrity and transparency. So we did raise questions as to what the government has been doing around this BBI.
Yep.
Has it been properly anchored in the law, and has it been properly set up to ensure that the process, apart from it being anchored in integrity, it is transparent and there will be accountability at the end of the day.
At the end of the whole process.
So we did ask a few questions, which we expected the government to respond to. Those questions around the resources and the creation of the task force. For example, we did ask how much the task force used in executing its mandate. And the next question was, how was that money appropriated for them to expend? Then we did ask who among the public officers authorized the expenditure, so that we could know whether that expenditure, if it was authorized, and from what vote was it appropriated from. And that kind of authority to encourage expenditure is anchored in the law.
Right.
And at the end of the day, the responses must be made to Parliament on that expenditure, and from what vote it was done. So we did ask for a comprehensive breakdown of the monies paid to the members, the salaries and allowances that were paid.
You're asking very tough questions there. Who did you direct those questions to?
To the head of the public service.
Okay.
Did you actually present a petition to the head of public service?
Yes, we did.
Formally?
We did present that at Rambe House.
Okay. Now, you are a commission of jurists. You, of course, know where the law stands and where you know how the processes should run.
Yes.
So let's start from the first question. Is this anchored in law? If they've been gazetted, is that not sufficient to say that they're anchored in law?
Gazettement is a public announcement. But you should have a public announcement of something that is anchored in a
So at the very,
proper
this is
process.
coming at the very end.
It's coming at the very end. Of course, you cannot. For example, let's look at the appointment of or removal of the council of the University of Nairobi.
Yes.
The process of appointment or removal is anchored in the law. So when you issue the Gazette notice, it is in reference to a specific provision
Yeah.
that is setting out how certain things must be done.
Yeah.
So we ask you, yes, it has been gazetted. It is a good process because you are gazetting the people to undertake certain processes, which at the end of the day are good for the Kenyan government or the Kenyan country. The people want certain changes are necessary.
Yeah.
Only question we're asking, these issues that are necessary, how are you going to resolve them? Which process?
If there's no legal basis that
which
says
process has been anchored in the Constitution for us to have these particular changes? Because yes, you want to change an institution, but the institution itself has a provision on how you should change it.
how about the Gazette notice reading? I mean, yes, so when you raise out, you can say Gazette notices usually go with pursuant to this and that, pursuant to this part of the Constitution, with the powers conferred in me by the Constitution. Did the president not actually say the powers conferred in him by the Constitution to, in managing the country? Does he have to follow a specific legal statute to name any task force?
You said the president exercises executive powers.
Yes.
And the executive powers allow him certain leeway in executing certain mandate. But they have also limitations in how they should be, because these are things that must be approved by Parliament. In this particular instance, there was the process of appointment. You're appointing elders. This is a process which is allowed to the president. You can appoint elders. You can appoint a commission. You can appoint. You can have an executive order can be utilized to.
You can appoint advisors.
Yeah, those things are there. But you see, once you have appointed the advisors, they have advised you. This process must be undertaken in a certain process that is going to be anchored in the law.
Okay.
You have started because this. Let's put it this way: there is a need,
Yes.
but you must catapult this need into what is going to be legally binding. All right. So there is need for building bridges.
Yes.
Let's put it that way.
Yes.
There is need to build the bridges.
It is justified.
It is justified, yes. But you have to build bridges on proper ground. Let's assume you're building a normal bridge and you're the engineer.
Yeah.
You must have a proper foundation.
You must,
Okay.
You must have a proper framework.
You must have a proper framework.
There must be a river.
The river must. The river is there
It has already been identified.
because we have identified
We need
there is
to
a
cross.
river. We need to cross it.
Now,
But is this
what do we
bridge-
need?
Yes.
We're
That's-
going to use steel. We need to start with the foundation, dig up the foundation. So you're saying that we have not dug up the foundation. We just brought in the steel and the metal bars and laid them across.
No. Before you lay the steel, you have to have a framework on which you now put the inputs you're speaking of. They fit in and they fall into something that has been established and has been known to withstand the test of time. Otherwise, that bridge could collapse on day 2 of it being put up. So that framework that I think is being referred to here is the legal framework.
So let me just read the heading of the task force appointment.
Yes.
Gazette notice number 5154 of 31st May 2018. Establishment of task force on building bridges to unity advisory. Like he said, it is a question of advisory. It is notified that the general information of the public that His Excellency, the President, has established a task force to be known as Building Bridges to Unity Advisory Task Force. The notice was signed by the Head of Public Service, Joseph K. Kinyua.
It ended there.
And it
Of course, then gives
sets
us the
out
names.
the names,
And the
terms of
TORs.
reference, purpose of the functions, etc. Now, based on this, we sought that RTI on this, because this is a task force that has been appointed, and we know it has expended so much of the public resources. So we've asked, how was this anchored now within the other frameworks that exist?
Okay, obviously these are not the first set of questions that you've asked. I mean, through processes, government processes over time, right?
Yeah.
Have you received adequate response to previous queries that you would have made?
Yeah,
historically.
Yeah, the information is normally given, and when it's not given, we have actually gone to court to seek that they do so. We seek Madama's application where the prerogative orders are issued by the High Court.
Right. Now, in this case,
yes,
how, in terms of now presenting a query, let's look at a timeline then in terms of answers that you expect should have been given to you, because you said we haven't received any answers. How much longer are you going to wait for an answer then in this case? Because it's something that seems pertinent that, members of the public should know. Individuals or, other bodies should know the anchor upon which now this is based. And in terms of public funds, in terms of government funds, how much then is being used? How long are you going to wait?
We gave this demand in December, and we had expected at least a reasonable time, could have been about 14 days or so, and we are now working up to decide on the next level of participation. What we need to do now is to escalate it to the next level. We will, at the least, will have wished to send a reminder.
Right.
Of course, we're assuming that
they, for one reason or the other, they didn't see it.
Do you sense some kind of reluctance to answer the questions that you've posed?
We tend to think because our request is essentially non-partisan, and I think it should not be confused with certain of the turncoats who have come up to say that these are waste of public resources. We are not interested in the political angle of this issue, because these are issues, occasions that really anchored in our constitutional dispensation. Of course, for example, when the questions that we've discussed and what we specifically raised, maybe I could just indicate on the legality questions that you asked earlier. We did ask, because reading what you have seen, the notice itself, it is not anchored in any specific law.
Yeah.
It was a notice as it is, gazetted
for public information.
For public information. So we did ask, and these are very, very clear questions. Under what laws and specific provisions of the law was the task force appointed?
Okay.
Then we asked what laws and specific provisions of the law gave the task force the authority to undertake its work. We asked under what laws and specific provisions of the law was the task force regulated. Then we asked under what law did the president make the appointments to the task force. We asked what law provided for the criteria used to select, nominate, and appoint the various members of the task force.
Let's take a short break with Kelvin. When we come back from this, we have Kelvin Mogani, the chairman of the International Commission of Juries, Kenya. He's telling us about some questions that they've asked regarding the appointment of the BBI task force and, of course, how it has conducted its work. 17 minutes past 7. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, in Nairobi this morning, we're at 17 degrees. It's said that it will be clear, but I think definitely now experiencing some showers, and this is going to take us through the better part of the day, holding strong at 24 degrees at a high. In Mombasa, at 26 degrees, it's partly cloudy. Expect some showers later with a high of 32. In Kisumu at 20 degrees right now, showers coming in later the day at 26, the high. Nakuru with a high of 24 degrees today, currently at 16 degrees, and cloudy conditions expected expect rains through the day. 15 degrees in Nyeri right now. Expect some rain later on. 24 degrees will be the high and a low of 15. And in Malindi at 27 degrees right now, mostly cloudy. And we expect showers in the day with a high of 31 and a low of 26.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
And this is the Situation Room. With you in the studio is CT Muga, Nduoko, and I'm Eric Lati. For the hot seat this morning, for this hour, is Calvin Mugani, Chairman of ICJ Kenya. We're talking about BBI and some questions that you've raised. Of course, Calvin, when you say that you are completely non-partisan, and then you ask some of those questions about a political process, politics will come in. But let's try and steer clear of the direct politics and ask some of these questions that you're asking. I mean, what is it that inspires you to ask the questions? So you've asked, for example, all those things. Under what legal framework was this committee gazetted? Under what legal framework was this committee formed? How has it operated? Using what law or legal framework has it operated? Of course, this is building up a case for your second level of questions.
But Eric, can I ask you a question? I mean, if you consider these gentlemen and gentle ladies are jurists, they're lawyers. What other questions can they ask that fits their mandate? They have to be legal questions. I mean, they can't ask. They can't go and ask. Okay, these individuals that you have appointed.
How did you pick them?
No, do they grow maize? Do they plant wheat?
Muga puts it very clear. You see, we cannot at the level we are. We cannot be expected to be villagers and ask questions at that level, because these are not issues that are being raised at the Baraza level.
Yeah.
These are constitutional issues anchored in the law. Because we are not asking the committee that don't undertake what you are doing.
Yeah.
That is theirs. It's not our process. We are not moving to court to stop the process. What you are saying and what we have asked very pertinently so is that you want to create an environment that will thrive with Kenya. Right? This is a process we are asking ourselves. We want to do something to make Kenya better. And remember, our interest to make Kenya should not be confined to the political process. Because we must have both the legal mechanisms, the process mechanisms, and the outcomes properly anchored in the law, so that we don't have these issues spring up every time there is a crisis or perceived crisis, or something is not properly coming out.
Yeah.
Let me give an example, because if we remember after the first multi-party elections, there was a problem in terms of how political parties ought to be regulated. And when Tom Obondo was the first MP to defect, questions were asked, how do we regulate this process so that we have integrity in our elective political processes? Of course, over time, we have tried to create these legal mechanisms to ensure that the political parties are properly protected and they don't have these hiccups every time there is a,
the internal wrangles.
Internal wrangles and all that. Of course, when you came down to the IPPG of 1997, they tried to come up with some hybrid process to try to bring some integrity, and appointed members to the then Electoral Commission to spice up what they believed was going to be
the cure
for that limited purpose. Of course, it didn't work out. And in 2002, there was still a problem. And you remember what happened in the first NAC coalition? Because the political process was not properly anchored in the law. That has continued. And as you realize right now, the Tanga Kieleweke branches of the Jubilee is because there is no properly set out process. They've been calling for either parliamentary meetings or things like that, because we have not accepted that we should be having institutions regulated by laws that are anchored in the Constitution for proper management.
Do you
Because-
think that this would change really with just the political charge that is present in the country, regardless of the fact that whether there was a framework or not? Do we say that if there's a framework, that it would then mean that individuals, politicians, leaders would stick to that framework and operate within it?
If the law is properly anchored, that should be the
Should
necessary
be.
outcome.
Should
Let
be.
me give another example of what we have right now. There is talk about IEBC. In fact, one of the recommendations in the BBI is that we should have a reconstituted
IEBC. Right.
The reason I say that this is just a repetition of what has been going on since the 1997 IPPG is because the creation of the current IBC was the same process. They removed the other ones so they can put these present ones. They are going to be the victims of the same process that they were appointed under.
Yeah.
And the thing we're asking ourselves, once that law was watered down, the process will continue recurring every electoral cycle.
Which raises the question, you're talking about there's a legal framework on how IEBC shall be constituted, how it shall be managed.
Yes.
Right? But because of politics, that is sort of thrown out of the window.
Right.
There's a legal framework on how political parties are to be governed and regulated in the country. But politics ensures that we have political parties that are not holding elections, political parties that are not holding members to account, political parties that are not accounting for their finances, all those things, yet we have a legal framework. So in this particular case, when you say that we need a legal framework for BBI,
How is it going to change anything? Right.
it doesn't guarantee anything.
You see, the question that comes up is not that there is no legal process for IBC or the removal and appointment.
Yeah.
Because when you amend the constitution, that's a legal process of changing it.
Yes.
And what we need to have is a process that is watertight, that you cannot amend it easier than previously the way it's intended to be done.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when we talked about the judicial fund, which has not been properly implemented, and the funding right now to 0.6% of the GDP is very little. Likewise, the IBC also has their fund, because these are the only two institutions that have their fund anchored in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
But since 2010, none of these these institutions have got their own fund. The Cabinet Secretary Treasury has still been running it as if they are part of the departments of the
Department of Justice.
Yeah. and whenever they open the taps when they want, close the taps when they don't want.
Yeah.
And that's what, because you see, so long as the law has not been complied with,
Yeah.
we can't keep on moving, saying, and I believe that the biggest problem we have had with the constitutional dispensation since 2010 is that the provisions that are there in the constitutions have not been properly implemented. We have gone to court numerous times to ensure that certain of these things have been implemented.
And yet,
They don't do it.
So it looks as if we're in a downward spiral in this case, because if we're saying that people can then just come and, enact things at will, at whim, and people have gone, you talk about ICJ having gone to court, having made demands, things then seem to happen in a manner in which, as they like or as they wish. So then how do we still then keep agitating for legal frameworks to be put in place when we have leaders or politicians who can then do things in the manner at which they want?
I think what we need to remind them, and I think this is where you will come in as for the state, is to ensure you remind them that it is not the law that is not there. It is not the people who have not done what they need to do. It is the people who are saying that they need to build bridges who have failed the Kenyan people.
those who are building bridges are the ones who...
They're the ones who have failed us. Because if they implemented the law the way it is in the first place, we should not have been these questions. You cannot talk about... let me say, when you look at that report itself, there are very many provisions that nobody maybe is articulating them out that are very good. These provisions that are very good for the public. We touch on healthcare. They're very good. We touch on
gender equality
and economic and social rights. They are very good provisions. One thing that you hear and everything that you're being told is that we need a referendum. But the Wanjiku is not being told. These are the things that you need to know about the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force report. Very good people. Let me give you a very small provision in the report. which may be very good for the common man because the public out there do not know that, for example, when you've been building roads, we tend to think that the roads are being built for motorized transport.
Yes.
So that every road you see in any place between, let's say, between Nairobi, Maimayu, Nairobi, Naivasha, you have not seen a provision for the pedestrian or cyclists. Roads are built specifically to provide
for
for
the
the
road.
motorists.
Yes.
And they don't think, because when you drive, you see a cyclist, you try to hoot at him and say, please get up.
Move.
You ask, where does he go? Because there's no provision
For that.
for that in the entire country.
And the BBI has a
The
solution for
BBI
this.
has actually made a provision that such any future building
Infrastructure,
Yeah.
roads and such.
yes, should always ensure that is catered for. That's a very nice provision
It's
in
a good one, yes.
the BBI. But nobody is telling Wanjiku that this thing has got a provision that
Would the
caters
Prime
for-
Minister ensure that this is done? An executive Prime Minister? Or
Uh,
do we need a presidential
like I
system
said,
for that to work?
like I said, what we are concentrating on
Yeah.
is political provisions in terms of political offices, instead of looking at those issues that really concern the public,
really-
which are also contained
In the same report.
in the same report. Of course, nobody is asking who said that Nairobi should be a metropolitan area, not included in the counties.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the report itself, it has not set out whether there were references by the public that they should have Nairobi as
a metropolitan
as a
area.
metropolitan, not as a county, not as a county like the others. Nobody asked for that. They don't say that it was there, but that came from them. In fact, when you look at the references in the report, they say, we received this kind of information, and this is what we believe should be our recommendation. Nairobi comes at the very tail end from nowhere. Like, yes, they had all these things to do, but somebody told them, but remember,
They received also.
they don't say they received any information on that. Of course, that is an issue that
The politics of the day.
but we can't talk about having a proper public service, because the BBI talks about ensuring that the public service does not incur wastage. The recurrent expenditure should not be what it is right now, almost 75%. So we should spend more on the development expenditure. And that brings up the question that we asked. If you want to have integrity of the persons being appointed in the public service and reduce wastage, what have you done to ensure that these people you have appointed are not the same process that you are trying to stop?
Let's take another short break. Calvin Mugeni is the chairperson of ICJ Kenya. He's here. We're talking about the BBI. So the next question that he's going, of course, to tell us that they have asked is, who financed this BBI process? How much money has it cost the taxpayer? We'll find out what he's been told. Good morning. 28 minutes to 8 o'clock.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic
Make
ballads.
some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, taking a look at Nairobi Ngong Road inbound, starting from Dagoretti Corner all the way downtown, is actually bumper to bumper, but outbound, we don't have a problem there if in that is the direction in which you're headed. Langata Road, traffic is terrible right now. It is chock-a-blocked as trying to get people coming out past KWS and then trying to access the T-Mall roundabout. Interestingly enough, though, if you get to that area, you can get off to Bagazi Way without much of a problem right now. Unfortunately, a fatal accident took place on Mombasa Road a few minutes ago, and right around GM. It's causing some extra traffic there. Of course, with showers in this particular area, means that the roads are a little bit more slippery. Please approach with caution. Let's arrive safe, folks. You see anything else that we need to know about, please do let us know. Also on Thika Road, where we did have a chock-a-block situation earlier, it seems to be moving, not as fast as you'd like, but it's moving all the same. Spice FM KE on Twitter, 0719-012-600. Give us a call and let us know, and we'll spread the word.
.9 Spice FM. Mombasa. 96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
One of the things that we've noticed in the recent past, Mr. Mugeni, is disregard for court orders among senior public officials. Does the ICJ have any role that they could play in ensuring that these people become the leaders in actually ensuring that court orders are actually obeyed? Because what they're doing, from the opinion of the public, that is ourselves, is that they are encouraging impunity.
Precisely, that is what has been going on. And you see, if we are not a country governed by the rule of law, then we're headed to the jungle. And the very first thing that we should always try to respect, even if you do not like any court process, if you don't like it, there is always a process, either review or appeal. But once a court order has been made, it should be obeyed. We have had this process where orders have not been obeyed by the executive. And at one point, we thought that it was only the executive that had disobeyed court orders. And for long, the biggest institution that had floated the process of obeying the court orders was the legislature. Because there are very many orders that have been made against Parliament, and Parliament ignored and said, no, we cannot be controlled.
Separation of powers,
yes,
and all that.
But you see, separation of powers is to understand one small thing, which is one of those constitutional law provisions that most people, maybe in Parliament, they didn't understand, is that the only institution that is meant to evaluate and review any laws that have been made, whether they conform under the provisions of Article 2 of the Constitution, is the judiciary. That is the mandate of the judiciary. That any law, whether it has been passed 100% by parliamentarians, if it does not comply with the basic constitutional provisions, it is the judiciary that has to review them. And that's how we understand the process of separation of powers.
Yeah.
That even if you made law, if it doesn't conform to the basic principles that are set out in the Constitution, then the judiciary must step in once an application has been made to ensure that it complies with the basic provisions.
But the instances where we see the legislature not complying and raising a ruckus about it is when the judiciary attempts to stop them right in their tracks at debating something. We haven't passed this law. So it has been brought to you that we are working on this, and you start telling us, we have issued an injunction to Parliament to stop proceeding with this lawmaking process. Isn't that jumping the gun?
You see, when issuing prerogative orders, they can question the process. They can question the process. And remember that if certain requirements have not been met in the process, the judiciary can step in to ensure that that is complied with. For example, you cannot introduce a motion which has not, for example, if it has not met, let's say, provisions of the on how a motion is or certain regulations are being introduced. If it has not met the basic criteria, then the courts can step in and ensure that is not done. For example, I think you remember the Wambura process in Embu. For long, the question was whether the process was being followed, and whether they should just send it to Parliament to ensure that is done. Process is about the law. So if you have not followed the process that has been set out in the law, then you cannot say, let me conclude, so then you can...
then you can come back.
You can come back. That's not how it's done.
Should you not be issuing advisories at this stage?
The Supreme Court has the mandate to issue advisories, but the advisory mandate is limited. And for example, let's look at the question of the gender,
the two-third gender
rule. The two-third gender in Parliament. there have been decisions that have been made. There are more than 4 cases that have been determined.
Yeah.
It has not been applied. The BBI right now is coming up with that attempt to do it, but the math, I don't know, that math.
The formula is
or the matrix that you would
yeah,
use to actually arrive
the
at
metric
it.
that is going to be done is still a very, and since 2010, it is only in the last cabinet reshuffle that the president has now reached the 2/3.
now we are at 2/3. Now we are at least a third of the
after
cabinet.
almost 10 years.
Yep.
Right? And when you see people saying that the governor should have the alternate of the other gender, we should have said that should apply also to the presidency.
Right.
Because it's a question that shall be used.
We said that here.
We actually had
Yeah.
that discussion
It-
here, and
it-
we said the
it
same
starts
thing.
from the very
Yeah,
top.
because you see, you cannot talk about county government when we know the constitution provides that Kenya is governed at 2 levels.
Yes,
There is a county and a national level. So you don't talk about 2/3 gender
in one level.
in one level and they don't fail to impose it on the other. Let's not discriminate between the two set arms of government. The lower, they call it county or
The national.
they
The lower level of-
they're each given a separate mandate, and of course, as you say, since 2010, we had a time frame when Schedule 4 ought to have been applied in terms of ensuring that devolution is properly, all functions that need to go to the county levels have been done.
Yeah,
But 10 years down the line,
a lot still hasn't happened.
it actually devolution has been done, let's say 15 to 20%.
Looking at how all of this comes to a head, even talking about BBI and such, I want to go to the issue of a referendum now. I mean, coming from your point of view, is one necessary? We've talked about certain things that have not been implemented. If we're looking at 100% transition of devolution, if we're looking at implementation of the Constitution of 2010, and we're looking at only certain percentages having been reached, are we not then, is it necessary? I'm not talking about the feasibility of it, but is it necessary then to have a referendum? I mean, if there are talks of having such in the middle of this year, is it necessary when there are other processes which have been very clear that have not seen the completion?
You see, the question of referendum only begs this answer. Where do we require referendum? The issues that have been raised in the BBI report, 90% do not require referendum. Because what they're stating is exactly what we have been saying, that they need implementation.
Right.
The bulk of the issues, you don't require referendum to prepare proper roads. You don't require referendum to ensure that the healthcare is properly issued to the public. The only areas that you may require referendum is where you need to change the structure of government
Right.
that is already set. Of course, that is on the political level. You realize that nothing was mentioned about the judiciary. We required a lot to be done in terms of ensuring that there is proper separation of powers within the Judicial Service Commission and
Right.
the management of the judicial system. That ought to have been properly addressed, which it has not been done. But what I would say is that when you talk about having 3 structured levels of government, that is the national, regional, and county. That requires a referendum. When you require to change the political system, that is on the structure of government, it requires a referendum. But to ensure that the public service is not replicated both at the national level and the county level, it just requires the implementation of the devolution process. That does not require any referendum.
So why the push for it? If we look at the nitty-gritty and say that then it's not really necessary, if some of the things that we're looking for in this report is just then the implementation of things that essentially are already on the ground, then why is there, there seems to be quite a push for it. Why would you say that is?
The question of, let me say that we need to have an all-inclusive discussion. All-inclusive discussion means that whether it is a question of referendum and whether it's a question of implementation, these 2 discussions must be in tandem.
Right.
We cannot look at the referendum alone without asking ourselves, what have we not done and where did we go wrong the last 10 years? We must have a proper audit.
Right.
As ICJ, what we've been wanting to do and what we have so far been doing is that we are looking at the failures that we have gone through in the last 10 years to ask ourselves, where do we need to improve? What has not been done? And so much has not been done. Of course, in the health sector, you can say there has been a lot of failure. You realize that the health sector, we have almost 80% budget in the national level, and it is a devolved function. It should have been the opposite.
Right.
And we're not giving it a proper attention. There is suggestion that we should have a health professional commission to manage the health professionals, but the infrastructure, the hospitals should be managed by the counties. So this is a question that needs to be also taken back to the constitution, because to change this structure, it requires a referendum, because the docket on health is a devolved function. Now, to return it back, certain of it to be done by a national commission, it requires an amendment to include that commission. Of course, we have got so many commissions that are replicated that needs to be harmonized and other things done. It require an amendment to the constitution. All those things are there. But the conversation as to whether we require an amendment was done at the time when we did the 2010 constitution. Well, there was agreement that there is 10-20% that requires to be done. Nobody's talking about what that 20% was.
We didn't start from there.
We have not started from there. But we are in agreement that the things that needed. Of course, when Honorable Ruto opposed the 2010 constitution, he said the things that needed to be done. And the answer was that 20% will do the panel beating as we move on.
Yes.
But the panel beating has not been directed towards that 20% or 10%. And right now we have not done proper audit because there's so many provisions that have been declared unconstitutional by the court, and they need to be harmonized. All these issues, we need to have a conversation on it. I agree, yes, there is need to harmonize properly our constitutional provisions that we did not do in 2010, but we should not hurry through it. We should have a proper conversation to ensure that there is all-inclusive participation. And remembering at all times, what is Wanjiku's wishes?
What does Wanjiku want?
What are the needs of Wanjiku? And what is going to ensure that Wanjiku gets the service? Because when you talk about taking the development projects to the MCA level, we need to do away with the CDF, because that's not the duty of the MPs.
Yes.
We need to do away. The courts have ruled on that, but you see, because the MPs have been holding the executive at ransom. They're at hostage.
Held them hostage,
yes. It is always been this thing that we should give them something to ensure that they can keep quiet
and do their job.
Yes, but the truth is, the legislature is supposedly to do what is called legislation.
Yes, that thing.
And you cannot do oversight when you are yourself undertaking execution process of these things, which are supposed to be the preserve of the executive.
Yes.
And that you cannot now take it to the MCAs, legislatures at the county level,
at the ward level,
to do the same thing that we are trying to tell the national government to remove the counties, the CDF from the MPs. This is what you're saying is afflicting the country.
Some of these questions that need to be answered.
Yes.
Calvin Mugeni, chairman of ICJ Kenya, is in the studio. It's a 7:45. Of course, we'll also open up the phone lines. We've got one or two questions. 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. Let's come back to that question of funding the BBI process. And also we'll look at corruption and for the fight against corruption and the role of the jurists in this fight against corruption. Good morning.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. 96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Well, it's Calvin, let's get straight into it. We've seen state resources being used in this BBI process, from financing the operations of the task force to some state resources being used in their campaigns for the BBI. ICJ stand on this, or some of the questions that you're raising on this?
You see how they use it, when they use it, that's not a matter of concern for ICJ.
Mm-hmm.
We've asked for the process because we just want information.
The process of the approval to use it?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it anchored in law? As to whether the Building Bridges initiatives should continue, should not continue, that's a matter of a public interest. It has to proceed because there is need for that process. But we're saying let the process be properly anchored in a clear setup.
Now, you know the law back and forth, Kelvin. What part of the law do you see them saying that we've used these provisions of the law to finance the task force?
Public Finance Management Act. What does it provide for in terms of expenditure? It sets out very clear. When you talk about corruption that you have just raised, if any expenditure is undertaken by any public officer without following due process as set out under the Act, that the person is undertaking a corrupt act.
Ideally,
So what are you saying here?
If there is investigation on that part,
yeah.
I think that those officers should be in court.
Ideally, how should this process have been conducted? Let's follow the process. From where you stand, how would you have ensured that this task force is properly financed using all provisions of the law?
You see, if there is intention to create certain offices, they must be created under an existing law. Parliament can be presented Building Bridges Initiative Task Force Act, and within it will set out, or you can, or the president can set a commission under the Commissions Act. It can set a commission, and with it, will set up proper financial and management processes in terms of both appointment, officers, removal, and how they can be either sued or not be sued.
Yeah.
Because every act provides for these processes in terms of how that office is appointed, who is supposed to be the chief executive of that particular office, who is supposed to be responsible for who is the accounting officer of that particular process, and how should that process, the auditing of that process be done. Then they can have a process from where they can draw their accounts. That has to be anchored in law.
Now, there are task forces that are formed by ministers all the time, right? So a CS can come up with a task force. What law do they use to create a task force, and how do they finance those task forces?
You see, if you're setting up a task force under the Agriculture Act, it has very clear provisions on what to be done. Under the Health Act, there are also a task force. If you're doing under the Universities Act, there is a process to undertake that.
And the Office of the President does not have any provisions that allow the President to create a task force? Because this is a task force. That's what he gazetted.
You see, appointment, for example, of commissions has got a provision under the law.
So, Kelvin, I hear you saying in this case that this particular task force that has been created is not anchored on any law. So, in essence, what could be happening here is that there's an act of corruption then taking place.
Of course, when you read into it, in terms of our existing public finance management, there is no clear process in incurring public expenditure
For this particular process of the BBI.
I want to change this discussion. And I want to ask, because I'm seeing time running out, and this is a question I need to ask. We have a situation that has been evolving for some time where the Chief Justice seems to be pitted against the executive, specifically the President. But the Chief Justice represents the judiciary. What role does the Attorney General play, and what role should he play in this seemingly never-ending conflict that seems to be there?
The Attorney General is just an advisor to the government. He's like a legal officer. And he can only advise. He cannot tell them beyond what the advice is. If you remember, my friend Professor Giddo said, you give the advice, whether it is taken or not.
You've done your job.
You've done your job. The head of the executive is the president. The head of the judiciary is the Chief Justice, president of the Supreme Court. The tussle has always been around the question of the judiciary fund and why it is not being properly implemented. You saw the other day the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury tried to slash the judiciary fund by almost 50% development expenditure. I wouldn't say much beyond that because we have a current active litigation on that question, where we indicated, and the law is, once Parliament approves the judiciary expenditure,
Yes.
it is not for any other cabinet secretary or member of the executive to control that particular vote. It is left to the chief registrar of the judiciary, who is the accounting officer, and makes the report directly back to Parliament. So the issue we have in court is around that they have no mandate to do so. Now, the reason why you see there is a push and pull between the president and the judiciary on the one side is because, on the one hand, there have been appointments which have been made by the Judicial Service Commission,
yes.
Court of Appeal judges, High Court judges of the Specialized Court, that is the Employment and Labour Relations Court, and the Land and Environment Court. These appointments have been pending for the last 6-7 months. And we have a crisis in the judiciary at the moment. And it's worrying sometimes because you hear the president saying that we have a problem with certain of the persons who have been nominated.
Yeah.
They have been appointed by the Judicial Service Commission. What is really worrying, and I think this is what the public needs to interrogate, you have persons already serving as judges of the High Court. They have been nominated to be judges of the Court of Appeal. You as the executive are saying that certain of these officers are not fit to serve. They're already serving.
And they're already serving.
So what I could have expected the president or anybody else who had issues with any of
Form
them
a commission.
is to to make a petition, present a petition to the Judicial Service Commission and say, Mogeni is not fit to serve, Mogeni is not this to do that, and then a commission, a tribunal is appointed, like we had the other day on Justice Ojwang. And then it can ventilate these questions, and they are resolved. If it is a lawyer who is yet to be appointed as a judge, that's a different question. Then there is a process to do that, and how that should be done. But the question that is really worrying, you're casting aspirations on a serving member of the judiciary. And there's a process to establish or to investigate them.
Yeah.
What are you telling the public? That the people who are serving, and
Are not fit to serve.
the way you see somebody saying the way you see I don't know who is supporting this process. You've seen billboards coming up, attacking the judiciary.
Yes.
You've seen somewhere being said Wakora how, and all sorts of things.
Very active on social media.
Very active on social media. There are people are trying to do that. The question is, there is a process that ought to be followed to avoid undermining the judiciary. Because the independence of the judiciary is the backbone, the pillar of any democratic society is an independent judiciary. And as soon as you start going through the jungle walls and start saying that the judiciary is this, the judiciary is that, you are affecting, you are undermining the process.
But the judiciary should also accept that the public have an opinion on them. If the public are expressing an opinion on how they feel the judiciary is doing its work, this is exactly what we're seeing. Billboards, banners on the road.
You see one thing you must remember. Judiciary is not like a political process where you go and elect people in the public barazas and campaign for them, in Gikomba and everywhere else.
Yeah.
And what do you call this Choma place on Jogorod?
Bama Market.
You see, a judicial officer, once appointed, follows a process of removal. It's not an elective process.
True.
On appointment, there is a process of appointment, there is a process of removal.
Yes.
And you can't use social media to undermine that process.
Why not?
Because this is
freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression, yes. But you see, when you talk about the integrity of a process, you don't go to express yourself outside the laid out norm. If you have an issue with a serving judicial officer, remember these questions that come up. If you have any issue, for example, with the bail terms issued to Babu, and I believe my friend Haji Nordin Haji is doing something about that. If you have an issue with the way that bail term has been given, the first thing to do is to have it reviewed at the High Court. There is a very simple process. Immediately the bail terms have been given and you feel that they're not properly anchored in law, you move for review, because the court system has been given the checks and balances within it.
That is for you lawyers. And
Not
jurists to
not
do
for
that.
us, not
For
for us
us.
as lawyers
For whom,
only.
though? But for whom?
It is the same process that should be applicable to any public person intended to either review or check the court process.
It's the same thing as arguing, and we'll continue the conversation shortly after the top of the hour. It's the same thing as arguing that there's a clear process of how to remove a president from office. You can either impeach them or you wait for an election and you get them out. So you should not be holding demonstrations if you feel that the government that you elected is not serving you.
Picketing is a right, but you see the question is, on what process? You can picket the courts, yes, go to Milimani and do it. That's what they say. But you see, you can the right to picket given to employers and employees to go on strike does not mean that you should go and picket inside the courtroom. Because that is not the picketing you're talking about.
But you can picket on social media. You can raise your concerns about your government, whatever arm
you
of
see,
government.
every decision that has been made by the courts
Yeah.
is subject to public debate.
Hold on to that thought, Mugen. We come back to this at the top of the hour. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll ask you to stay for 5 minutes so you can conclude, and then we'll allow you to leave. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
All right, coming into the city centre from whatever direction you're coming in from, whether you're coming in from Westlands or using thicker roads, the Globe underpass is at a snail's pace this morning, and we're trying to get into the CBD is not as smooth as we would expect. Langata Road, absolute mess this morning, and we are bumper to bumper, even further down, all the way from Galleria, Bomas area. Donholm along Jogger Road, it's jam. Trying to get to the city centre by way of the city stadium roundabouts today. Not as easy as we would have it. Kiambu Road right now is an 8 almost, with the overlapping that we see, easily 5 lanes. The rains are here, my friends, so take it a bit easy as you're approaching certain areas. It is quite slippery. Ngong Road also has joined the mayhem, and it is slow. So you're going to have to again exercise patience today, because we still see the same situations on Mombasa Road as well as we do on Ngong Road today. So you see an alternate, do let us know. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Give us a call. Let's see what we can do about it.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Kelvin Mugani, the chairman of ICJ Kenya, will be leaving us shortly, and we thank you very much for joining us. Now, for the final questions, as we come back to this petition that you've sent to the government, asking certain questions about the BBI and the BBI process. For how long do you want to push this before you take the next step, which is taking legal action, basically demanding answers through the tougher route?
No, we'll work on that in the coming week or so with our partners. But at the moment, the process is ongoing, and it must be, we're asking those who are responsible for it that as you undertake it, and we expect that it should be properly anchored in the proper legislation, so that the outcomes are not subsequently challenged for illegality. Because there are very good issues that are being raised, but let's hope that they're not going to be affected by questions of illegality because certain few things were not properly done. let's do it. Let's do it properly.
Let's do it well.
Because we need it. The country needs this process. And you know where we were in 2017, 2018, January. And we don't want to go back, into that question. It's a common thing that, yes, it's a good process that we need to have. And that conversation is good. We know there are many areas in our, both political and governance system that need to be, the bolts needs to be tightened and properly anchored. But the question is, we should not try to clean using our own dirty linen.
Or using dirty water.
Yeah.
Final question, Kelvin, before you leave. So ICJ's membership is a membership organization. The members are judges, lawyers, prosecutors, even legal students. Now, all those together have been accused of fighting the war on corruption, or basically just ensuring that this war on corruption is not moving as fast as it should be.
We're not fighting the war on corruption. We are fighting corruption. You see, when you say we are fighting the war on corruption,
Yes.
we say we are anti-corruption.
Yes, that's
no,
what
no,
I mean.
No, that's
The
not,
accusation that has come from the president, for example, and the executive is, look, when it goes to the judiciary is where the stumbling block is. This is where the bottleneck is.
It can never be. It can never be. And remember,
How
the
is that?
How?
Judiciary cannot be a rubber stamp. The judicial process is very simple. Undertake your investigations properly as the DCI, and prepare your prosecutorial documents as a prosecutor. And once you present your evidence to the court, it must be properly presented. If you have a case, it will go through. But remember one thing that people question. The first thing I've always heard is that once you present somebody to court, the judiciary releases them, bail or cash bail or whatever it is. This is a right that is anchored in the Constitution. We are the ones who passed that law. There is no law that requires somebody to be retained in custody unless there are compelling reasons for you not to be done so. That's our law. It's anchored in the Constitution.
Yep.
And this is we have a task force that has been set under the Judicial Service Act, which has set out very clearly under the auspices of the National Council on Administrative Justice that bail is a right that can be granted on certain conditions, and the release or implementation of that process, it follows certain standards.
Yep.
The public ought to know that this is not just an issue that is being done by the judiciary. It is an issue we Kenyans, when we removed bail from questions of murder. You remember the robbery, violence, and murder cases?
Yeah, the one
before 2010 Constitution, there was no bail.
Yep.
You stay in custody until
Your
the
case
case
is
is heard and
determined.
determined.
Right.
That changed in 2010. The Constitution that we have, Article 49, gives a right to a person who is suspected of an offense, number one, to be released at the police station level. Number two, to be released at the court if the police have not been able to undertake that within 24 hours of him being presented in court. And the police are given the money if there is a suspicion that there are reasons why this person should not be released. They must come with the relevant affidavits to ensure that the court is appraised of that, so that the person is not released pending the trial.
Okay.
Of course, you can see that is happening in the Joey case.
Yep.
But if there are no compelling reasons to or not to release, you are given terms like the one Honorable Bado was given. Do not interfere with witness at this point. Do not go
Do
at this
not
point.
go
Do
close
not
to
do
this area.
All that was given. This is because the law provides for that. Now, if you go to court right now, 80% of applications for adjournment are by the prosecution.
All right. That's where I was heading next.
Yeah.
So yes,
80%.
bail has been granted, but now the case is not starting.
Yeah, because you see, the law requires that you give the accused persons all the facilities to defend himself. The first facility is to give the accused person the statement and the documents you will be relying on to
prosecute the
to
case.
accuse him. And you find 90% of the time, at the time they present the case in court, they're not ready.
They're
with the
not ready
document.
with the case.
But we've often heard, the expression that we do have adequate evidence to then, issue a warrant of arrest, for example. So what happens between the time when an arrest warrant is being issued and then when it gets into court, suddenly is this information or evidence then lacking? We often ask ourselves that question.
It's just a statement that has been made.
let me give you the most used expression by the prosecution.
Yeah.
The requirement is that you should not commence or detain somebody if you have not undertaken investigation.
Yes.
Right.
As soon as you present the person in court, you hear somebody saying, we are still undertaking
yes.
Investigations, yes.
What does that mean?
We're
We're not ready.
They were not ready to charge him. Right?
Shouldn't the judges be taking action against such
such,
prosecutors?
because-
You see,
Really?
it's not a question of it's not for the judges. Remember what I said, the court does not express opinions in an ongoing case. The opinion they make is a ruling and a judgment.
But
They
in-
cannot, because you see, at the time you go to court, what the court has is a charge sheet. The documents that form evidence is only shared between the prosecution and the defense
And the
lawyers.
defense.
And it is only presented if it meets the threshold of evidence.
Yep.
It's presented to the court as an exhibit. When the witness is presenting the evidence and he presents the document meeting the requirements of the evidentiary rules. If it does not meet, it is rejected. And the court will not have opportunity to see it until the time when it's
No,
presented.
no, no. What I mean here, Kelvin, is the judge sitting here and can see the number of adjournments that have been applied for by the prosecution or by the defense for the right of the accused, and seeing that this accused person cannot move on with their life because of this pending case, ensuring that this case actually moves faster. Can't a judge pronounce themselves on this and say, look, you guys have applied for 4 adjournments so far over the same reason?
Every adjournment is considered on its own merit. And I don't think that every adjournment should be considered 4. But if you're making the consistent adjournments on the same grounds, it has happened in many cases where the court informs the prosecution, we are not going to give any further adjournments. If you are not ready to proceed, you close your case.
Yep.
And if the defense is the one playing around, orders will be issued. And my friend Cliff was told, if you are in hospital, please make sure you're in court. You have to come in pajamas. The question is, the court had to appraise itself that yes, it was not a frivolous application.
Yep.
But you see, these things are looked at from case to case. That there is no standard for every case, but you must look at them individually. But it will be wrong for somebody to say that the judiciary has failed to prosecute these cases when, in the first place, they have told the executive, we need enough officers to prosecute these cases. You have failed to give them the budget. They brought in about 10 magistrates in Nairobi to hear corruption cases. And when you relocate these magistrates to Nairobi, they must be
You
given
must take
allowances to undertake their process here for the time of the cases. Then you don't give them the money. What do you expect them to do? They suspend the hearings of these cases because you're not giving the facilities. You cannot give the DCI a budget that is maybe 10, 20 times more than the judiciary, and expect the judiciary to undertake all those cases that they are
DCI
investigating
is pumping
when
in.
you're giving them 0.6%
So
of the
we're saying
budget.
that the backlog that we see now, or a lot of the delay in what we see, is because there's no money?
No,
There's no capacity.
There's
actually,
no
it's not even
capacity to fulfill
capacity.
this? What is it?
I will take it further. That the bottleneck,
Is in the ODPP.
no, is in the executive.
Yes.
It's not in the judiciary. It's
The executive will complain.
Yeah.
But they must remember
They
that
have a
you
role
see,
to play.
you have been told we need courts at every county level to ensure. Right now, the High Court and Economic Crimes Division is only in Nairobi, the entire country, because we don't have capacity. You're told we need to have more judges whenever there is an application from the
Lower court.
from the lower court. It must be dealt with by the relevant High Court judge,
Yeah.
and you don't have the capacity. You have refused to give the capacity to develop the courts. We are clogged up in Milimani. And we're saying, give the facilities to ensure that there is proper. Right now, we may need to recruit maybe 100, 200 magistrates.
Yeah.
Because when the more prosecutors you have, the more investigators or investigations you're having, you require a commensurate number on the other side to be handled by the magistrate.
But also the issue keeps emerging in this particular show, and we keep saying the first time we saw the reconstitution of the judiciary, or the expansion of the judiciary after the 2010 constitution, we talked about expanding or facilitating the judiciary to get better. Surely, close to 10 years down the road, we can't still be talking about they still need the same thing. I mean, we should be seeing this is the progress. We gave them 10 billion shillings in the first year. We should be giving them 6 billion shillings in the sixth year.
Where we have been and where we're going, we are doing very poorly, and so far we're still doing very poorly. Right now, we still have manual recording of proceedings. You know, Parliament records its proceedings through the Hansard. Everything is recorded,
Yeah.
and you can make reference to all these things every time. Not a single court has gone that way. We are still doing manual.
It's a magistrate to type.
Not
handwrite.
type.
Even to
Handwrite.
type.
You have to
Handwrite.
handwrite. Remember,
Handwritten, yeah.
we are still doing the manual handwriting process.
Yeah.
You don't have researchers to assist you. As soon as you finish the court, you can undertake such
There are
a
no
process because
stenographers.
There are no
There-
stenographers. And you're talking about giving capacity to the judiciary. They don't have the capacity. You give the capacity and you see how things move. Yeah, I remember Honorable Mutuga said we need to have even courts in the evening and during the weekends.
Yeah.
But do we have a facility for that? We don't have the facility to undertake that. You want the court system to move, lubricate the wheels of justice, and it will move. But you cannot talk about giving, every time the judiciary budget is being cut, from the initial one 0.9, now it's 0.6, it's going down 0.5, and the standard in the world is 2.5%, and nothing is being reached. Because right now we are talking about the infrastructure, building the courts.
Yeah.
But you cannot have the infrastructure without the capacity. The engine, you have the body,
must go
but
together.
nothing is there.
Thank you very much,
The
Kelvin.
judiciary needs to have something, and it is wrong for the exec to talk about. And I think I can conclude by saying I didn't like the way Honorable Maraga said that, is down there and the president is up there and he's heading the executive part of the judiciary part of the
He
government.
belittled himself.
Of course, that was not proper, but I think we should have a conversation on it very soon.
Yeah.
We'll come and tighten it proper when you call us to come. But I think there is something that was not properly done, and the president should know that the judiciary to remain independent, to ensure that the government, because you see, for the government to properly work, its mechanism must be checked by the judiciary at all times.
Yeah.
There is a question of judicial review of the executive orders
Yeah.
whenever they are coming and how they are properly done. So you should not complain that the public procurement board is having a tussle with certain government office, because that is a judicial process. If you have failed to undertake procurement properly, then they should be checked
There'll
by the
always
court.
be.
And if the court makes a decision on it, irrespective of who participated in the tender, if a certain process were not done, it is not proper.
It is not proper.
So you should not question the court, because if the court has made a pronouncement,
Yep.
the Attorney General should move very quickly to the Court of Appeal and seeking a stay, not questioning it in a public baraza,
Public rallies.
because that is belittling the judge who did it, and it's not proper, putting undue influence, and it becomes what? When you castigate a judge and say this one did this, should not have done that,
then we lose confidence in the
you're losing
judiciary.
confidence in that process.
Kelvin
Thank you.
Mugeni, thank you very much for coming. We'll invite you again, of course, to talk this time specifically about the judiciary and the judicial reforms and what we should see coming from the judiciary. Asante sana. He's the chairman of the International Commission of Jurists, Kenya. We'll have him again. Thank you very much. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation at 17 minutes past 8.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic
Make
ballads.
some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic
Make
ballads.
some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, still experiencing some showers in Nairobi this morning at 17 degrees. It's mostly going to be cloudy for parts of the morning with a high of 24 and then 16 as the low later on. In Mombasa right now, 27 degrees. It's partly cloudy. Expect some showers there, coming to a low of 25. Going to be a rather warm day in Mombasa. In Kisumu at 21 degrees, we see a low of 19 today and showers expected through the day. It's mostly cloudy in Nakuru right now. We're going to expect some showers through most of the afternoon. Nyeri at 17 degrees and a high of 24. Expect some showers later on with partly cloudy conditions presently. And finally, in Malindi at 28 degrees right now. We're going to expect a high of 31, a low of 26 with expected showers later in the day.
Chilled Spice. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Right. 94.4 Spice FM,
20
Nairobi.
minutes after 8 o'clock, this is A Situation with Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Nduoko and CT Muga. Let's change the gears a bit, like.
Right. Every time you look at a headline in one of our dailies or one of our publications, if you are me, the question that comes to mind is this actually true, or is it something someone wants me to believe is true? Let's look at today's headlines and standard. Dirty tricks in YT2 ouster. The Nairobian, Sonko. These women want your job. And it goes on and on and on a daily basis. These headlines influence the way we look at our world. It influences the way we look at our politicians. But more importantly, it influences the way we think and the way we believe. Does it help us believe things when they're true, or does it help us disbelieve, or does it utterly just confuse us? When you throw in the utterances that we then read in these very same papers, I am about to be finished. I am unfairly targeted. The president came to my backyard and insulted me. Money has been poured. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. And yet, this is what we consume on a daily basis. If I eat too much, I eat too much carbohydrates, I eat too much ugali, there'll be a direct correlation to the bulging belly. If I drink too much alcohol, that is not water, there'll be a corresponding influence on the way I think and the way I behave. But do Kenyans really understand how it is, what they consume on a daily basis, whether it's at political rallies, whether it's in their churches, whether it is within the conversations among friends? Do they really understand how this influences the decision-making process? When we walk in the rain, should we blame the rain or should we buy an umbrella? This is what I'm saying. Every time you want to quickly make a conclusion about something you've read, whether it's a choice political statement by a choice political individual, it is your duty to think, it is your duty to imagine, it is your duty to take responsibility for what influences your life. You are the person who determines what you believe. You are the person who determines what that belief will do for you and to you.
It's true. Are we gullible?
All of us at some level are gullible. All of us. It is the level and the widespread nature of our gullibility that actually is being put into question. We are all
So
gullible.
would you say that ours in Kenya is higher than maybe our neighbors in Egypt?
No.
Egypt are
No.
not our neighbors. Our neighbors in Somalia.
Egyptians are our neighbors. If we look at the connecting Nile and Lake Victoria, yes, we are neighbors. I wouldn't use the same yardstick, but they have their points of gullibility. We have ours. Ours is manifested in two ways, predominantly the way we believe people of the cloth and the way we believe our politicians. That's where it manifests itself the most.
Politicians are people with no cloth.
Politicians are people who are clothless, among other things.
No moral fiber. That means no cloth.
Well, our people of the cloth are fast catching up with the politicians, and they are also beginning to indicate to us that they are clothless.
So politicians come and keep telling us all these things. From campaign season to when they're in power to now, like Kelvin Mugeni was telling us, the BBI has so many other things, but our focus, because the politicians, is focused on what the politicians want us to see.
We've been tuned.
And even when our Secretary General of a political party comes and accuses us of focusing on other things, yet that's what they are highlighting.
Narratives that we read about I believe in many cases, if they are from politicians or from religious leaders, are not only targeted but they are purposeful. They are intended to elicit a certain reaction or to produce a certain result. It's rarely careless. It may appear to be careless, but it isn't careless. It's well thought out. For instance, this statement that there is one community that has hogged the lion's share of jobs in the country. It seems pleasant to people who want to believe it, and on the face of it, it may actually be true. If you go through the employment of individuals, community by community, department by department, in the entire country, you'll find that statement is not true. Simply not true.
I think what happens is that the elements of sensationalism that is applied to all of this just kind of picks everybody up as you go along, because the first thing that you hear and that you're likely to believe before you actually go through it with a fine-tooth comb is sensationalist, and we tend to go with those tides. You know, if somebody says, you know, just like you talked about, one particular tribe getting all the jobs, you're thinking, well, okay, this is something that I would likely believe because a name would pop up every now and then. But it's not founded, it may not necessarily be founded on any kind of truth, but by virtue of the fact that they call one name and then add other adjectives and add other things like all, every, you know, you tend to kind of go along with it.
People call
by virtue of the fact that
people
it's
call it an
sensationalist.
over-representation. Again, that may not necessarily be true, because when you use the word representation, then the question I will ask you, what is this yardstick for representation? Is it the numbers in that community? Is it the level of education that is represented by that community? Is it the availability of schools in that community? What is it that you're referring to? You see, such statements could even be true insofar as if you look, for instance, at the cabinet, or if you look at, say, public service, you may say a certain community seems to be dominant in that community. In a previous dispensation, one could have said the same, that this community X seems to be dominant in this particular dispensation. What is not spoken of is why that optic that you are talking about is the way it is. And it should be talked about for you to understand it. If you don't talk about why what you're seeing is so, but you simply assume that it's representative of the entire spectrum of the country, the moment we devolved, that statement as it was constituted and it has been heard became completely false. Because every county without fail will have a preponderance of people from that county in the employment of their county government. And it is expected to be so. And there is nothing wrong with it being so. It is their county after all. The people who work there are their people. The people who they represent again are their people. It's like, do you expect, for instance, any county to have in its assembly people who don't represent the people who come from that county?
Of course
the answer
not.
is
Of course not.
no. So when you're having discourse about these things, there's certain details that are often missing. And people prefer to believe the generalized statement that explain their current condition. You see, these statements actually indicates an apportioning of blame. I am in the position I am in because this advantage has been taken in that particular direction. Whereas that is not the truth, really. Why we are where we are often has very little to do with anybody else other than ourselves.
So you want us to question ourselves and to question everything that we consume?
I want us
Much
to question
more.
each
Let's
and
go to
every-
religion.
Yes.
When you talk about questioning religion, to what extent do you want us to question religion?
Do not limit yourself to questioning
For
it.
questioning it.
So
Go
we
to the
start
top-
asking. So we start asking, like,
No, take it to the top. Is there God? Start there. Because if you don't question that,
but that's the basis upon which I've actually gone to this particular church.
precisely,
So
precisely. If you then find that God doesn't exist, then abandon your belief. Think of something else. Maybe believe in trees, or believe in vegetation, or choose a stone that you think would
What
make
Eric
an
might be
adequate
looking at
God.
is that if somebody stands on the pulpit and is saying certain things, or preaching a certain thing, then you must question everything. Are you saying that until what point then must you question everything that is said to you, pass it through a particular kind of filter, then for it then to make some sense to you as an individual?
that goes against the whole doctrine of faith, right?
Yes,
And this
yes,
is a,
no,
this is a
no, no,
philosopher's this is a philosopher's school of thought where they say question everything and all. When you start believing, and you've decided, for example, I'm a Christian and I want to believe, and I go to church, and the preacher is reading from a certain part of the scripture. Now, you want me to start asking? No.
Yes.
Did
Yes.
Paul really exist?
Yes.
I've already
No.
gotten to a point where I
If
believe.
you've gotten to the point where you believe, then that question should not be asked.
It should not come up.
But it does no harm to ask that question again, because somebody may ask you to give reason as to why you believe what you believe. If you don't question yourself, you will not have a response. You need to respond to yourself first with those questions before you can adequately respond to somebody else.
People don't like getting into that space.
Whether they like it or not does not. You don't apply the necessity.
Then
of it.
they
but people don't
shouldn't
like that.
complain
that's
about
that's the whole
pastors.
issue of religion. This is global.
Then
You will
shouldn't-
find people who, let's say,
Then take everything
follow
without a pinch of
Roman
salt.
Catholicism.
and don't complain
Then don't complain.
when you're misled.
If you don't want to ask questions, if you don't want to go deeper, if you don't want to do any work for yourself, or even question what we would then see as moral authority, then don't complain. Take everything as it comes.
And continue that way.
And where would you be as an individual, or even a group of people, a community further down, if you don't question the things that come to you? If you want to go into the realms of the law and politics, if you don't question, then don't complain when these things are meted upon you. Don't complain about the levels of corruption. Don't complain about mismanagement of funds and things like that. Don't complain about inadequate developments. If you're not asking questions, if you're not questioning the manner in which things are done, the manner in which things are said, you don't then have any ground to complain about anything.
The conversation continues on our social media platforms as well. 0719 012 600 at 29 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and then we continue.
Spice FM. Nyeri.
All right, let's take a look at how things may have changed. In this case, not really, because they've stayed the same. The Red Hill bypass, which was coming off of Wayaki Way, at least to ease traffic, doesn't really do that because everybody's using that as an option. And so now that means traffic is clogged on the bypass, it's clogged on the highway, and so getting out is not as easy as we thought. In this case, again, it's an exercise of patience. Langata Road, all the way from the barracks today, is still posing this problem. Wayaki Way, of course, we've seen is really, really slow. Mombasa Road, where we had issues today, we've had the third accident now on Mombasa Road, and that means that traffic, of course, is a lot slower. That's what we see. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Let us know what you do see, or if you find an alternate that nobody may have thought about, let us know and we'll spread the word.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
When surveys are conducted among the institutions that people say that they have trust and faith in, media ranks highly. Right? And now you started by giving the example of, look at the headlines today. So dirty tricks in the Waitito ouster. And you're talking about the headline in the Nation, the headline in the Nairobian, the headline in the Standard, on the Star.
Daily,
the people,
on a daily basis.
And people have got into a place where they're accustomed to knowing that when it comes to sort of mainstream media, they question a lot of social media as well, apart from when it appears very well masked to look like it's a mainstream media. But it's because you trust that there have been processes. You know there are processes that go, by the time you get into a headline in the paper, it has been taken through some stringent process.
And there's a committee usually that sits and decides. It's not some individual
Yes.
who has this thing popping up in his head and they decide. But let me take it further.
So you don't
Eric.
want to waste your time
No, it isn't.
questioning further. You know,
No.
read, consume, move.
Well, develop a mindset that questions even as you're reading. Let me just read an excerpt from this, okay? The dirty tricks in Waititi was behind the scenes. Look at the language. The scramble for magical 24 votes needed to send Babayao home sparks accusations of engineered walkouts and cash for votes. Now, they are setting you up. They're telling you everything that could go wrong here went wrong. And this entire thing
Was a sham. It was a
Be-
charade.
You're being with every word that you read, inducements as maneuvers in Senate, meaning there was nothing that actually followed a process. Everything was engineered, and there was backhanded deals, and there was underhanded deals. They have in those few words, they have described a very, very dark, dreary, and scandalous scenario. they have told you what took place here cannot stand very close scrutiny.
So the impact of this is that you start losing faith in
Oh no.
in that institution called
You
the Senate.
read and you understand that there is a reason why they are doing what they are
They're
doing,
doing.
and presenting it this way. How dull it would be if they said there were 24 votes needed, and people maneuvered, and
There was canvassing.
yes, you'd say, but this one, it's like a thriller novel, okay? They are setting you up for the thrill, and then it continues. Now, that sort of language is purposed. It's not accidental. It's a journalist. They know exactly what they're saying. They know exactly what they're doing. And they also know what they want to achieve. Now, I'm saying, read it and then ask yourself, was there really a scramble? Okay? The maneuvering, yeah, but politicians maneuver all the time. Is there jostling and debating and bargaining? Yes, there usually is. Okay? But why the 24? Essentially, when your mind asks these questions,
Yep.
you end up being better informed. So that the next time someone says something, your mind just shifts into gear and starts asking, okay, even as you're reading, did this really happen? And when they say dirty tricks in YT too, these dirty tricks are the very things this gentleman is being accused of. They are things that it is believed in his position as governor he ought not to have done, and it is being said those things which he ought not to have done, he did.
It did.
Yes. So, dirty tricks are being used to bring out the dirty tricks and to remove the governor who was involved in the dirty
dirty
tricks.
The dirty tricks.
Yes. That actually is the message that is being sent. Now, yesterday, the nation had an extremely insulting headlines. Why do we vote these clowns?
Why do Kenyans vote for clowns?
As I said, we, Kenyans. Essentially, if you vote for a clown, what does that make you?
A clown.
A lesser clown. Because the person you're voting in is going
the
to be
bigger one.
Is a bigger one. Is the boss now. But so
Essentially, Baba
you,
Yao.
yeah, you lesser clowns have gone and voted someone of your ilk to take on this role that you clowns cannot actually perform. So this is the representative clown. Now, do we agree with that headline? Are we clowns? Are we misinformed? Are we extremely gullible?
Maybe.
Or based on what we're talking about today, perhaps this is the case.
Maybe.
Because, I mean, here, without then a dismantling of a lot of the information that comes, or a breakdown of the information that comes to us, then really you take what anybody else says at face value, because we don't go and look at the underbelly of matters. Look at something as simple as or not as simple, but look at something that we can use as an example with the BBI now, that is taking this country by storm. And if you ask yourself, what many Kenyans actually understand by the BBI, we've had, a lot of people have said, well, okay, if our leaders understand it and they've read it, then all right, we understand
We're
what,
good
and
to
we're
go.
we're good to go with them. But really understanding, breaking it down to bite-sized pieces to really know what it means for the future of this country. How many a Kenyan can really say that they're in a position to have understood it end to end and what it means?
The word repetition is often used either for emphasis or to clarify an issue. But in psychological terms, when something is repeated often enough, it brings in the concept of conditioning. You hear it often enough. After a period of time, whether it's false or not, it becomes part of your understanding of belief system, simply because you've heard it enough times. Or if something is done often enough and you see it, the element of wrong diminishes, even if you think it is wrong. The doing it is what becomes the norm. The morality behind it now takes second place. So, what I'm getting at is that what one may not know is that one is quietly being conditioned. When you keep ingesting these things, for instance, if you keep watching violent movies, do you really think that it will not affect the way you think or the way you respond to things? If you keep watching movies that have foul language all the time, do you think it will not influence the way you speak or the way you utter things? It will. Why do you think, for instance, pornography is banned in many, many countries in the world? Pornography. Or it is only allowed with people who are considered adults of a certain age. So you have X-rated, XX, even triple X. So you actually wonder, what on earth does triple X have? Because
What does it have? Because X is bad
X is
enough.
already terrible enough. Okay.
Right.
Why? Because there's an understanding that these things do influence behavior. Now, whether you read it, whether you hear it, whether it is spoken to you, it does influence you. You may not think so, but it does.
So the way we keep consuming politics in the headline every day,
Yes.
therefore is conditioning us.
It is conditioning
it's
us.
impacting us.
It's impacting
It is
on us.
making us bigger clowns on a daily basis.
Oh, either that
Because
or
the
it
news is
expl-
about clowns. It's all comedy every day.
or either that, or then when we talk about how Kenya is Kenya as a country, we're not even talking just about politicians, but Kenya as a country so politically charged. It could be as a result of all that we see day in, day out. It's the politics that carries the day. We're not talking about the other factors. The development issues in this country. We're not talking about those. We're not talking about education. We're not talking about health, unless something like the coronavirus comes and slaps us in the face, right? We're really talking about politics. Who said what? Who's allied to whom? Who has tricked the other? And what other magical forces are taking place? That really is what encapsulates everybody at any given time. What has, the Deputy President said today? What has Gatundu South Member of Parliament said today? Who has been insulted by whom? That kind of thing. So I think that because of that, all of that comes at a people then makes for what we see when we talk about it being politically charged. Truth be told, that's what it is, because that's what comes out. And I think so, yeah, definitely being conditioned then to operate or at least think in a particular way.
But then what is peculiar then about us as Kenyans? Because this matter of politics being the headlines is a global phenomenon.
It is
Everywhere you go in the world, the front line, the headline in all the major newspapers is going to be about politics. The headline in the major TV, in international and local TV stations,
the first story is politics.
is going to
Yes,
be politics.
yes.
But you can see in those countries, politics has not permeated itself to everyday discussions and conversations. Bar talk is not about politics in some countries.
Part of the
in
reason,
Kenya,
part of the reason is because our welfare is actually determined by our politics in this country. If you're in a third world banana republic developing country, the politics determines who you are, what happens to you on a daily basis. These countries we speak of, these things were sorted out. They are considered a norm. If you don't have a job, this is what happens. And it's guaranteed. It's not that you have to talk to your MCA to talk to your MP. No,
Yeah.
it's guaranteed. If you don't have a house, there's a way of sorting it out. It's guaranteed. So that isn't a conversation. It isn't a daily conversation. The conversation you will have about homelessness is somebody who perhaps is what they call a social misfit, somebody who can't fit into society, has a mental problem, has a drug problem. That
or
is
abused the system. at some
that,
point.
yes, that sort of discussion is what you'll have. But for us, the basics are our fundamental discussions, because we, as the citizenry of this country, are an integral part of the social system of the government.
So we need the politics to be fixed so that our basics are sorted.
If the politics is fixed so that we actually have systems that do what they are supposed to do, the discussions will change. The politicians will not be the most important people for us, because you'll wonder, what on earth do I need this politician for, really? When the things, I don't need this person to legislate for me. I don't need this person. It's like the example we give in Nairobi. Is the MCA for the area of Kilimani going to tell us they're going to bring us water? No. Is he going to tell? So if you ask the residents of, say, Kilimani, they don't even know who the MCA is actually. And I don't think they're even going to care. They won't even bother knowing. Why? They don't. The issue of needing the MCA doesn't occur. It simply doesn't. All you need to move out is do some 20 kilometers out of that, and you'll find an area within Nairobi where you need to know who your MCA is. Because the very things I've mentioned, water, electricity, are still a problem. When it rains, drainage is an issue. So the politician has taken center stage because of our non-developmental record. Now, and because they represent the bringing forth of this, whether through legislation or pushing for it, they're important. Now, that's why when anything touches on them, it is also
Becomes a
important.
headline.
They are already important in our minds.
So it's not what we are consuming that's conditioning us. It's our condition, basically.
What you see, our condition is a status quo. We are poor. That's the status quo. Now, when you're poor, you will be faced with one key focus: how to feed yourself. Not how to be rich. No. How to ensure that you feed yourself. Now, once that is taken care of, then you can think of other things. But because this feeding is a problem, you want to also focus some energy on determining who can help lessen this pain or hunger that you have.
You know what I'm trying to get myself to understand.
To wrap your
is-
head around, yes.
Yes, is what are you saying, that we are what we consume on the one hand, and then on the other hand, you're saying we consume this because we need it.
No, you asked and I explained. The status quo is that we are poor. if you're poor, you'll think in a certain way. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't contradict what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. Question it. Because do you really need a politician? The bulk of the people who vote in this country, again, form that class of people whom I'm referring to as poor. Now, if in all these years and all these votes, nothing much has changed with the leaders, it's
Then
really...
you have to ask yourself, you've
Surely,
been able to survive.
This is what I've been doing, and I'm surviving, and this person doesn't really bring about this change that I want. Do I really need this person? That's the sort of questioning I'm thinking about, because you're doing it. You don't actually need that person to do what you're doing. You
I'm
don't.
doing it, but it's not enough.
Yes.
That's why I'm constantly looking and trying to seek him out, because there's a lot that I need. And I cannot do it by myself. I cannot get piped water to my house. I cannot get sewer running out of my house to wherever it's supposed to be going. I cannot get electricity to come to my area.
That you will
I cannot get a road done. So I know those are things that I need, and I need this.
You see, the lie is that if you
Bugger.
voted, if you worked as a group and got this person in, those things will be provided.
Yeah.
You did work as a group, you did vote this person in, it didn't happen. So perhaps you should rethink. What next should we do? That's the thinking I'm talking about. It isn't working. Let's think.
Let's think. Let's reject this whole
Let's
thing.
change it around.
Let's question this thing that we've been doing and ask, is this really what we ought to continue doing? Because the results it's actually bringing about do not benefit me.
Time for a short breather. 8:45.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic
Make
ballads.
some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Spice FM. Nyeri.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
Phone lines are
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. City Muga this morning is telling us we are what we consume. So we consume a lot of political news on a daily basis. So from politics to religious information on a regular basis. And yet we start complaining. But City is saying it's because to a larger extent we don't question what we're consuming.
I am saying don't blame the rain.
Get an umbrella.
No.
Or get off.
Seek shelter.
Seek shelter.
That you can do. You may not be able to buy an umbrella or raincoat, but whether you blame the rain, if it's raining, it's still going to continue
It's still going
raining.
to keep
It's
raining. So it's up to you to do something about it. Either, get adequate shelter or then use these
Choices.
apparatuses that are going to stop you from getting wet.
These are choices that are
Cho-
available
choices
to
that
you.
need to be made.
They're available to you. On page 3 of the Standard, there was an article that I found particularly interesting. Particularly, the Kenyan Ugandan men who fight for share of breast milk.
You said you found it particularly what now?
Interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes, because here is a story that arises from research that was conducted by a doctor researcher by the name of Rowena Merritt. She's a behavioral scientist. And she was examining this phenomenon that she found odd. The finding was even odder. That's why it has been published. That men who have women who are lactating will want, not all. It was reported that there are men who will want to share this breast milk with their children. And what is of interest, they'll want that milk before. Now, when I say they want the milk, it isn't expressed in a bottle, direct from the source. And in the absence of this milk, they will mete out violence.
Okay. They will mete out violence.
Oh, yes.
If they don't
yes.
get it.
If they don't get the milk,
Yes.
there's violence. And two things come to mind. They are drinking the milk which is intended for the child.
The child.
Okay? And they drink before the child. If they don't get the milk, they will beat.
They will be beat the mother and the
partner.
child at this case.
Yes, and also the cases of violence were reported when they were drunk. Okay? This is news which is in the papers. All right? Now, there are many questions I want to ask.
Oh, yeah, me too. I have quite a number. But
Yes.
okay.
I would ask, where was this research conducted? Because it's generally men, Uganda, Kenya. Which part of Uganda?
How many?
Which part of Kenya? Sample size. How many respondents did they talk to? And what else did they say? It would be interesting to read the whole report, because I'm sure it will give you all this information. That's the sort of questioning that I am saying. I ask. Because if you say Kenyan men, no, it's too broad.
Right, because this is the thing that we're talking about, because anything that, and it could be in the paper, it could be a news item, whatever it is, the majority of people, I mean, at many times, even us included, would take this piece of information and say, wow, okay, this is interesting, this happens, and then I would probably go on and tell the story later to somebody else. But then asking the question really and saying, okay, wait a minute, it sounds a bit bizarre, right, that this would happen. So then you ask, who are these men? What happens? Is it something that happens all through? Do they then encourage their wives to get pregnant so that they can now partake of this milk? Really, what is it? And asking questions beneath that. So I get the importance of why certain questions must be asked, and the due diligence for any kind of interrogation then must be taken. But to just take things at face value sometimes, and I think
Wrong.
yes, I think so.
Hey, can we go to the phone lines?
Yes.
Lydia has been on hold. Lydia, good morning.
Yes. Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you
morning,
for your
Lydia.
intelligent. Thank you for good morning for your intelligent program.
Thank you.
Now, it was a good point you raised. If it rains, complain about the rain or take an umbrella. That's the solution. So now I wanted to talk about judiciary. Chief Justice Maraga keeps saying we need more money, but he doesn't say. And only recently I'm so shocked that judiciary does not have computer technology at all. Can you imagine, of all places? Then he says that when a file is brought out, when it goes back, it's lost. Does that make any sense to you?
No, it doesn't.
Thank you. Please see that if you can discuss on this more.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. 0719-012-600. If it's raining, stop complaining about the rain. Seek shelter or buy an umbrella. Or borrow, whatever. Get an umbrella.
Stay at home and get sacked.
Stay at home.
And get sacked from your job.
And get sacked from your job.
Yes.
The whole basis of what you're saying is we ought to seek for solutions within ourselves.
Believe me, I could go on. In fact, let us look at the BBI and let's look at the saga behind it, all right? And
But before we do that,
another call.
yes, another caller is on the line. This is Solomon, our friend Solomon in Mombasa. Good morning, Solomon.
Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Yes, our headlines is what makes us every day. And my opinion is, especially the politicians and our pastors in the pulpit.
Yep.
As long as, for example, let me take a scenario of Pastor Nganga. The social media has busted him a lot of many times against him. But does his congregation do that? No. You complain of a pastor, of a church that don't even go.
Yeah,
That is one thing. So, and you see his congregants, they're okay with it.
they're okay. They're going.
So, then something else what I came to realize is, in Kenya, as long as it doesn't affect you directly, it is none of your business. You can complain. You just complain on social media, then the following minute you go back to your normal schedule. For example, if you go now and shift to politics, the pro ODM, when they read maybe the newspaper, if it's against them, they will complain. Then the other side will be happy on the other side,
Yep.
and the cycle continues. So it keeps our politics high and above, even if we forget the little basic things of this kind of development. And you go maybe towards maybe the end of the newspaper, you find they write good things about things are happening, people having opportunities in Kenya. But by the time we are on the half page, probably you are umekasirika.
You've been conditioned to the negativities.
Yeah, for example, the other day, this guy from classification board was in your station,
Yep.
and he said, if you watch the news nowadays, for example, one, it is murder, suicide, corruption.
Yep.
But by the time it is news about education, how we have 100% transition, it is on maybe the last topic on the news. So by the time you reach there, you already first of all you are angry with our country.
Yep.
And I believe maybe first of all they should give us what is good for us.
Start with the
At least we see
positives
how
and then we mix with the negatives.
Because, for example, if you look at Americans, they are very proud of their country, no matter how bad It is.
Point taken, Solomon. Let me take in Mina as well, who's also on the line. Mina, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
How are you
Good
doing?
morning.
I am doing very well. Just in in the traffic.
You're always in traffic at this time of day. Where are you now? Nyayo Stadium?
No, moving towards Nyeri. I'm actually towards. I'm a GM.
Oh,
You're
wow.
late.
I'm late, but what to do?
Yeah, all right.
And do keep giving us traffic updates. You should report like a newspaper.
It's a negative.
Should report what happened.
I'm
No,
sorry,
no,
man,
should
but
report
this
what
is the way it
happened
is.
No. Anyhow, I wanted to make a contribution towards our situation in the judiciary.
Yes.
And I very much understand their daily complaint or predicament that they are under resourced. They are still using very old ways of doing things. But the more we keep hearing about it, the more it appears to me they are very passive. They appear to me as a very passive department. They don't come out strongly as a clawing judiciary system that will convict you if you're found guilty. They just appear to me like they're very excusing, very laid back, and pointing out at why they can't do their job better. So I don't think the situation they're in that where they need more resources for sure should always be mentioned as to why they don't have any convictions.
Is it possible, Mina, that you've been conditioned by the negative news that you consume about the judiciary? And this was Kelvin was telling us.
Well, conditioning it's true we get conditioned sometimes, but I'm merely saying as a person on the street, each time the judiciary is put to task as to why we don't have as many convictions, as to why this is happening to the rich and this is happening to the poor. The most obvious
Traffic is a bad thing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mina is somewhere, maybe he's just past a standard group. So he was at GM going towards Nyayo Stadium. Mina, sorry, you'll call again and we'll continue the conversation. So he's saying, well, look, in a case like the judiciary, so they appear to be, just passive. They're not active. The information that you consume is this and the other. That is basically going to inform what he thinks and feels about them.
Mr.
But they should stop complaining and do something
Mr.
about it.
Mogeni has explained their cause in this short time he was here in a way that the Chief Justice has not been able to
Has
explain.
not been able to do the same. I mean,
Yes.
if anything, he's giving you an opposite.
I have been one of the people who has pointed to this complaint and said, what are you complaining about? I mean, explain to us what it is you've done with the other money. But it isn't broken down, meaning the Chief Justice should not be the spokesman for
this judiciary.
No.
judiciary.
They should look for someone who actually can explain these things better. Because explain today, that's why I kept quiet. I said, goodness gracious me. When you
the penny dropped.
Did it dropped.
not?
I said, when it's explained this way, they are definitely not the bottleneck. Yes, it's clear they're not the bottleneck. But they haven't been able to explain it.
Right. So what have you been fed? Obviously, something that would then be defined as a false narrative.
I was biased against them. I was saying,
absolutely,
what on
because
earth
now
is
the
it?
information didn't come out in a way that you would then be able to understand it differently.
Yes.
So then again, does then the onus not lie on us to interrogate these things differently?
But you see, the reason why we got the information is because we interrogated it.
Exactly.
We keep asking the questions.
We
Keep
kept asking the questions and we got
Keep
a
going
response.
beneath the surface and say, what really is this all about?
Yes.
And then we would be informed better. And the thing is, I think also, there's also the realization or the understanding that people are just not going to do that. And so they're held ransom by the fact that, call it laziness, that people are not going to ask a question beyond what they see or beyond what they hear or beyond a pronouncement that has been made. Nobody's going to ask, okay, really, what could be under this? No, okay, I'm just going to take it as what they said or what I have read.
Because the truth is,
and then they
cases
hold
go
you
to court
ransom.
and we don't see people getting jailed.
But that's it,
And then you hear, oh no, when the prosecutor brings this case to court, it takes a year before the prosecution begins.
So you can imagine how many cases there are just sitting there because somebody just doesn't want to do their job. And that's the thing that has been peddled to us. And we walk around with this belief all the time.
The thing that caught my attention is there's funding to get more prosecutors, which means they are handling more cases, but there's no corresponding employment of the people who handle those. Yes.
Can you believe it? Even like yesterday, the information that you gave us, CT, about, all these funds that are available for people who've been displaced in this country. My goodness. you would just think, okay, the government has no money. Unfortunately, what we can do is put you in a dining hall of a school that's on recess, and then we'll see what we can do
see
after
what
that.
happens.
When the
But there's
students come
funding
back.
available to be able to help.
And the conversation continues. You can call in 0719-012-600. Also join the conversation on our social media platforms. Spice FM KE. We are live streaming there on Facebook, on Twitter, YouTube, as well as Instagram. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock.
Sugar and spice and everything I know. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM. Nairobi. Traffic.
Okay. Mombasa Road is still a bumper-to-bumper situation, and we're looking at a terrible situation just between Cabanas and getting past GM, and then, crawling slowly towards Nyayo Stadium. And we still have that traffic situation this morning happening right there. Wayaki Way, still trying to come from Westlands into the CBD, not as bad as we had seen earlier before. So the lower levels of traffic now that, of course, we've reached 9 o'clock. Coming off Thika Road, we had a problem then getting to the Globe Cinema roundabout, and that passed, but not so bad now. It's moving, albeit slowly, but it's moving anyway. So we have better traffic situations, except for now, of course, what we see being the problem on Langata Road, and it seems to be something that will feature in traffic for the days to come. We'll let you know if anything out of the ordinary later on. Spice FM KE, if you see something that we need to know about, do let us know. 0719-012-600. Give us a call and let us know what you see, and we'll try to spread that information as best we can.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
You know, the basic mantra in any newsroom is trust but verify. So before you tell any story, you always have to look at corroborating that information with other independent sources. If C.T. Muga tells us this is what he's going to do as a cabinet secretary for health, we're like, okay, we buy it, but then we have to go back and check. Has he said this before? Is it contained in the budget? Is it part of government policy? Is it a new policy? Has it happened before? Is it true on the ground?
The conditioning that has led to what we are now discussing was when questioning was considered a crime. There's a period in our history when you actually couldn't question. If you questioned anyone in authority, it was like questioning the president, and yet you were not questioning the president. You're correcting the functionary who was telling you a whole load of bunk. Yes. Now, if we go back to 2013, 2014, I was talking about the BBI, and I want to take this matter of the BBI even further. A handshake brought about the presidency we had in 2013. It was a handshake. Anytime you have some sort of coalition agreement, it is a handshake. And there were utterances during that period. Two common ones. One was called tyranny of numbers. The other one was 10 years me,
10
years Ruto. Those are the two utterances. All right? Now, here we are in 2020, 7 years down the line. What do you have? A situation where, if you look at this case that was in the Senate, there's something called a tyranny of numbers. Again, you see a handshake. The Tanga Tanga and Kieleweke represent a division. The handshake, meaning ODM and affiliates, usually and interested parties forming one particular bandwagon, and then the Kieleweke forming one bandwagon. So now they have what you may call a tyranny of numbers. But the division that has brought about this discussion to this point has been one that dominated the media for the longest time. Was there a promise to support Ruto in 2022, or was there not a promise? Was the promise fulfilled, or was it not fulfilled? Now, the
Was
question
it stated or implied?
implied, yes. Now, the question that then one wants to ask is, at what point do you believe political statements to be true, and at what point should you disbelieve them? Because these were all political statements. All. Okay? Now, but we can see what those statements have done and where they have brought us. A realignment of the political configuration that we have in this country. Not the first time, and it won't be the last time. But at the heart of it, utterances whose meanings were taken literally by some, others were taken to have alternate meanings rather, but here we are. Now, you cannot therefore not say that these things don't have consequences. They do. They actually do. And they impact heavily on the entire citizenry in one way or the other. So you as a citizenry, it behoves you. It is in your interest that you listen. Eric, what was that newsroom mantra again?
Trust but verify.
But verify.
Yes, I would say verify before you trust.
Right.
Listen, verify,
And then trust. Yes. Now, it may seem like it's a tedious exercise, but all that is being required of you is to think. You already have the capacity.
Yeah. Keep thinking.
Just thinking. You're not being asked to give out money. No. You're not being asked to walk 10 kilometers. Just being asked to think. It's something you can do anywhere.
Yeah, and I think we're asking, the general population or citizenry to do something which they never really actually have been used to doing, because it's been spoon-fed a lot of times. It's spoon-fed. The information that you get is spoon-fed, that you're going to move forward or develop or progress in any way. That has been hinged on an individual being a leader. This is the person who's going to tell you how it's going to be. Never leave alone the fact that you are the one who put them in that position by virtue of your vote. But at the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to tell you, this is what we are going to do, this is how we're going to do it, this is what I am telling you, without really looking. And so you didn't need to do any extra work.
It's human nature. It's actually animal
for sure.
nature.
It is, because then we get lazy. You get
It's
lazy and you
animal
don't need to
nature.
think
There are
about
those-
it.
there are
It's
those that
been
occupy
done for you.
that position, and that's the responsibility that
And
they
they're
have.
going to do it.
Let them
Whatever
do
they
it.
come and report to me, I'm going to take it, because guess what? That's the position in which you're in, and I would expect that of you. In the same vein, I wouldn't expect you to come and tell me something that's not the case.
Yeah.
So why would I have to think about it, right? You come and you tell me, this is how we see it. They're trying to remove me from government.
Trust your leadership.
They're trying to remove me from government. They're witch hunting me, or
They want to assassinate me.
One thing or the other. Because you're in that position, I don't have to think about it really, right?
I just look at you and I trust
I
you.
say, okay, yeah, you're in a
Look, and
position.
it's very
You've told
wrong.
me.
Let
we
me
go.
present a situation that was in the media some times back, and where this issue of questioning matters has actually been involved, and you want to look at the outcome. This was the issue of the Vice Chancellor for the University of Nairobi. The headline today on page 7 is Magoha seeks out-of-court settlement in VC post row. Now tell me, if the debate, now this debate is, people went to court,
Yep.
discussion took place,
Yep.
others went to court, discussions continued. People started quoting statutes, the charter. All sort of legal precedences came into being. Look at what we have now. What they should have done in the first place. Quietly, as the university and the ministry said, folks, please, let's come and sort this thing out.
Let's sit down and actually see what this thing says.
Yes, let's, okay, we know blah, 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 we know their interests, we know they're this, but let's, do you really think that the Minister for Education, health also, the Minister for Education has come to this sane and sober understanding because it is, okay, I see that look. He has understood that this will serve his interest. Or the alternative may not serve his interest. Whenever people say, let's talk,
it means the direction in which you've been going in the last few days
This
is
thing.
not going to serve me.
It's not going the way you thought it might go. So you figure, let's do the wise thing here and have a conversation. Everybody who is involved here, by the way, all these people, they're all colleagues.
Yes.
Magoha was VC. Before you can't be VC unless you work for the university. These are people who know each other.
Yes.
This conversation could have been had a long time ago, but instead they've decided some lawyers must make some money.
Yeah, we go through this whole circus of back and forth and who said and who didn't say what and who is supporting this and who I got my marching orders from kind of thing. We've gone through this whole process and we could have just looked at the details of it from the very beginning and solved all this heartache and maybe used the time and efforts and funds to do something else.
Believe me, instead of even going to court, this matter could have gone to a mediator. Because mediation is a far softer way of resolving this thing. And the idea is to try and see how you can have a win-win. Courts do not go for win-win. It's very clear. What's the law?
There must be one.
Yes.
Winner.
This social discussion of, you see, like what happened with Babu Owino and his case. That's what a mediator would have presented. Would have said, look, under these circumstances, it isn't possible. This 10 million is a lot of money. But let's say in the next 3 months, that's how they look at it.
You have it, yes.
So there's a social element to it. We understand this. The guy hasn't died. So thank God he hasn't died. Because had he died,
my friend, it would have been a different story completely.
Precisely. So these discussions do help. When it is out in the open and it continues, and then everybody sobers down and goes and looks at the law and says, my friend, I think we may have opened a box here that may go beyond Pandora. So why don't we sit down and leave Pandora out of this discussion?
Yeah.
And that is because things were questioned. Had Professor Kiama just sat and said, okay.
Or if he had just taken it as it was and said, okay, the minister has spoken, all right, let me
I
just
can
go
back to my DV. No. Exactly. There are many cases where you will find someone, these are cases that warm my heart. A case that has been going on for the longest possible time, 10 years, 15, and the court says, okay, this lady, this land is actually hers, give it to her. We know what age she's at, but this is hers. I was reading about a landmark constitutional change in South Africa that women who had been married before 1988 could not enjoy. This was the law. In matrimony, whether it was so long as it was property owned by the couple, the man by law had a legal position to do whatever they wanted with that property without consulting the wife. It was a law. It changed. And they went back to 1988. So now you cannot sell that property without consulting the wife. Now, can you imagine the joy and happiness? So they were saying that many women stayed in matrimony simply because of that law. They knew the day I leave this marriage, I'm done for. I'm at zero. I'm at complete zero. Now, somebody questioned it. Somebody took that matter to court. That's a process of questioning.
Right.
And you had that sort of ruling. So much as we may malign our courts because once in a while they're represented by some terribly rotten apples, but by and large, they are a good spot for raising these questions.
They're doing the right thing.
Yes, they are.
But we should also look at everybody who's playing in that chain.
Yep.
Like who's brought the case to court, who is arguing for, against, and what is the judge basically being presented with, and what is the judge considering in this whole thing?
Yes.
Right. And I want to go as far as to say that, a lot of problems that seem to dog us or bedevil us in these in countries like here where we live is because of this one fact that we don't question. There is a road that's supposed to be fixed. There's a sewer system that's supposed to be established in a particular area. There are people who've been displaced. There is a health facility that does not have the adequate, staff or things or amenities within it. And we don't ask the question. We just kind of assume that, okay, this is the way it's supposed to be because there's an inadequate source of funds or whatever the case. We don't ask questions. And by the time we sit and just take things as they are, the rot has gone so deep that by the time anything can be done about it, we have to have commissions of inquiry and all sorts of things put in place. Whereas a question could have been asked. And I don't think we have that demanding nature where, look, I see things at face value, but going to the deeper issues and asking myself saying, can we come together, Eric, Ndu, can we come together and ask this question in the manner in which it should be asked? Answers will actually be given. But because we don't, we assume that because it's this way, that's the way it is supposed to be. And I do think that anything that then now presents itself to us needs a certain level of interrogation for us to be able to get the answers. And I think we'll be more informed. And by virtue of us being more informed, then we'll become more powerful.
The bottom line, C.T. Muga has told us today. He also told us this same thing, I think on Monday, or was it last week on Friday?
I keep saying it in bits. Today I've actually just expounded
the
on
solution lies within yourself. Right? So stop complaining about the rain. Seek shelter.
Yeah, that too.
We understand what you
and
mean.
buy an umbrella. It's coming up to 9:15. This is the Situation Room. The conversation continues on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also you can comment on YouTube. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic
Make
ballads.
some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, the sun is up in parts of Nairobi at 19 degrees is what we see the current weather situation. 24 as a high and 16 as a low, with some showers expected later this afternoon. It's 29 degrees, a pretty warm day in Mombasa. Expect some showers today with a high of 32 and a low of 25. Currently at 21 degrees in Kisumu, and it is mostly cloudy with a high of 26 and a low of 19, with showers expected in the later part of the day. 17 degrees in Nakuru, and it is partly cloudy as well. 24 degrees the high with some showers expected, bringing it to a low of 16. 19 degrees in Nyeri with showers expected through the day, holding firm at a low of 16. Malindi currently at 28 degrees, showers expected later with a high of 31.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's 16 minutes past 9 o'clock. Good morning, and thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have Ndu Oko and CT Muga. Let's discuss something else this morning. This is, let's talk about the ass, right? The donkey, a.k.a. beast of burden.
What did you say? What's the first thing you said?
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat that. So, for a long time, the donkey has had, pride of place in our society. It is this animal that is used as a beast of burden. Very few communities in the country actually consider the donkey a food item. For whatever reasons, we look at donkey as this dirty animal that rolls in the sand all day, and we use it to pull the carts and all. And it's basically or carrying luggage, or even sometimes carrying people. Or in places like Lamu, it's actually the mode of transport. So not a food item. Until the government started realizing that, yes, we need to start looking at things differently. So in 1999, the donkey was officially classified as a food animal, which means that this time now, you could actually trade in donkey meat legally. So what happened after that is that because the donkey was now classified as a food animal, there was legislation or regulation and licensing of abattoirs where you could actually go and slaughter donkeys and sell donkey meat, specifically indicating that this is donkey meat. Between 2016 and 2018, 4 export donkey slaughterhouses were opened up. One in Baringo County, another one in Nakuru County, one in Turkana County, and another one in Machakos County. So these were established, licensed, and operationalized. According to the 2009 Kenya Population and Housing Census, Rift Valley region led with the highest donkey population of 988,000. Northeastern ranked second with a total of 382,000. Eastern had a third with 304,000 donkeys. This is the kind of donkey population that we had by that time in 2009. Licensing of the slaughterhouses was envisaged as a potential avenue to increase the commercial value of the donkey and create job opportunities, and thus contributing to improved livelihoods. So these slaughterhouses were licensed and told, now what you need to do is to ensure that you have regular and proper and constant supply of this animal, because this is your raw material as a processing house. So you should come up with breeding programs for donkeys. We haven't seen any breeding programs. What has happened is, over the number of years since 2009, the population of donkeys in the country has drastically reduced. Now, what we have is cases where people complain of their donkeys being stolen. People are complaining of their donkeys having been slaughtered. Much of this is ending up in the local market on the back door. But also there's a lot of export of donkey meat and donkey hide to other countries, especially to China. This is leaving us with a donkey shortage. It has been said that we might start seeing a serious shortage of donkeys in the country by the year 2023. Just 3 years from today, we might have very few, if any, donkeys in the country. Something needs to be done. And this is what I'm proposing that needs to be done. We need to have a properly structured program of ensuring that we have a donkey rearing program where we grow the number of donkeys. In some cases, looking at the number of donkeys and saying, reduce the amount of donkeys that are being slaughtered or being exported or being consumed so that we can increase the numbers. If we don't do this, we'll have a problem.
Well, I think we're looking at also them going as far as saying that these numbers, we're looking at extinction by 2023 if something is not done now.
Yes.
And of course, the question would arise that why is it such a big deal? Because of the quite low income population in this country actually depend on them for sources of transport and for, of course, yes, manual labor when it comes to farms and, of course, transport of water and things like this. So, they're heavily dependent on them. But if we're going to look at numbers where they're extinct, then, you have an entire island in Kenya that depends on them for transport around the town, because I think Lamu has one vehicle, right?
It's part of the cultural heritage of Lamu.
Right. So I think, of course, when the question pops up that why then is this important in the first place, that's why it's important, because I think around the country, for sure, we have people using them in terms of transport. We have people then using them for these other uses that were the traditional uses in the first place. Of course, the reason why they're becoming extinct is because we see a lot of, cross-country trade, especially going to China specifically for their skins and other, medicinal practices that they have. And so, of course, it has heightened in the trade of it. But then in terms of like nurseries or so that where that new animals then are introduced, that has not really happened, unfortunately. And I think that's what we're looking at in this space where it should be. So in our day and time, we wouldn't see a situation where this particular animal is extinct because of this. And we're not looking at like things like natural selection. We're looking at things like because of the fact that they're being slaughtered at such a high rate.
Yep.
That is what is going to lead to the extinction.
This is what has happened. So in 2009, according to the National Population and Housing Census, we had 1.8 million donkeys. But by the last year's census, the number of the donkey population has dropped to 600,000. This is a third of our donkey population has been wiped out in 10 years. So you don't need to look at another 10 years to know that we'll not have donkeys in the next population census of 2029.
How many zebras do we have in the country?
Many. For now.
Well, I'm thinking of zebras because that's the donkey family.
Yes.
And in Kiswahili, I think a zebra is a pundamilia. Is it not so?
Yes, it is.
Exactly. What you've just discussed is precisely where we didn't build abattoirs, but this is what happened with game meat, as we call it. The antelopes, the elands. People tend to eat them out of extinction. And again, it comes back to wildlife conservation and how seriously, not the government takes it, but how seriously they ensure that the local population who live with this wildlife understand the importance of this particular wildlife and help preserve it. Now, it's the same thinking that should be applied to the donkey, because the donkey has been with us for the longest time.
Yes.
And I was also thinking that if we've gone this route, the next thing they're going to tell us is they want to kill dogs.
Yes.
And then they're going to have
dogs are classified as food animals.
Yes.
That's it. Because there's a market for it. Now, I look at it from two ways. So one, this is potential. The fact that you have seen those many donkeys actually being slaughtered or whatever has happened, the population of donkeys has reduced by two-thirds
Two-thirds
in 10
actually,
years,
yes.
it means that there's potential. This is actually a very serious revenue earner for the country, for everybody. If you came up with rearing programs where you said that this is where we are breeding donkeys, this is how we're encouraging people to start looking at donkeys, not just as beasts of burden, but as a source of livelihood for the entire population, we'll start looking at things differently. The same thing we do with cattle, for example, and all the other livestock, cattle, sheep, goats. We look at them as, potential sources of income. Look at the donkey the same way, not just looking at a donkey as one of the things that it's a djembe that I'll use when I need it, and then the rest of the day it can go roaming in the town center, because this is what happens with donkeys. You don't invest anything in a donkey. There's nothing about calling in a vet to come and look at a donkey. You don't even build a shed for a donkey. Donkey comes, tie it around that tree. If you untie it, it goes to the street, to the local town center. It eats whatever it eats. Comes back. It knows home anyway. So if you start looking at it differently, this is potential for turning donkeys into serious income earners for very many people around the country, because donkeys are found anywhere in the country.
Yeah.
So it's a big one. The other thing is looking at it and saying, if we don't take action, then we're going to lose what we've had for so long and for many years. What have other African countries done? Countries such as Botswana, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Ethiopia, and Tanzania have in the recent past banned slaughters of donkey. Kenya, in contrast, has licensed donkey slaughterhouses to meet the growing demand of donkey products. So the other countries are basically saying, no. We are not allowing this kind of stuff to happen. Kenya has opened up the market. Kenya, we are leading on this.
Ndu, can I ask you a question? What wildlife do you have in Nigeria?
Well, I mean, it's not really a wildlife country per se. Just a few up north. I mean, we have wildlife conservancies up north. So you have elephants and a few baboons here and there.
But was there a time when, like the southern part of Africa, East Africa, Nigeria had that sort of wildlife? No,
not really. Actually, it's never one of those countries that was seen to have. I mean, you have a few spots where you would have wildlife, but not to those numbers. I mean, you couldn't compare to what you have like in the eastern and southern parts of Africa. Nope.
Is there any part of West Africa where you could say this country had significant wildlife, like what we have in East and Central and perhaps Southern Africa?
No, because also you got to look at the weather as well, because it's a tropical area, and I'm talking about dense tropical, where wildlife would not be able to then thrive the manner in which they do here.
I think they also look at something else culturally. Very many of those communities eat some of these animals, right? So you look at things like monkeys and baboons and those other primates, and they're ready food. Look at lizards, not lizards, yes, look at mice. They're food, they're eaten in some of these areas. So you may find that over time, we basically just become extinct because you consume them, and we are not rearing them.
Lizard mice, what animal is this?
Right. Over time, that's why. If you look at what we have, the communities around Kenya, many of them actually do not consume wild animals. The Maasai population, for instance, even something like chicken, they just started consuming chicken just the other day. Things like chicken, they only know cow, goat, sheep, period. Zebra passes around there. Donkey, no. Elephant, no. Of course, giraffe, no. Antelope, gazelle, no. They don't eat. So over time, I mean, that's how come the populations maybe have also increased in these parts of the country. Now, looking at the potential that the ask gives the Kenyan economy, this is something that is it needs to be considered and put into place. Already, the fact that the government looked at it and so, yes, this is a serious business opportunity. There are people who are slaughtering donkeys and they want to sell and they want to export. There's demand for donkey hides around the world. There's demand for donkey meat. And we have all these donkeys. Let's classify it as a food animal. And with that, let's allow slaughterhouses to come in. Of course, they're highly regulated because they're export slaughterhouses. But it means that there's a market, and we've recognized that there's this market. What we need to do is protect the source, the value chain of this market. Otherwise, 4 years down the road, we'll be talking about the days we used to have donkeys in Kenya.
Well, I definitely think it's an important thing to consider. And unfortunately, what happens by the time something becomes extinct, this thought process did not take place, right? Where you're saying that in a few years, we could be in a situation whereby people will then will not be able to transport their goods. We wouldn't have it where it's something that is seen as a cultural heritage definitely would not then be in place if this thought process did not take place at the time that we are looking at it taking place now. And I think it's actually prudent to then give it some thought. And maybe also going as far as to saying, ban trade in some donkey products. It might be necessary to look at something like that, because then does then the need to have it in the country trump that of the sales that you get if you're looking at cross-country trade?
The question I want to ask when we come out of this break is it possible to actually have a behavioral change communication in a campaign in the country where people start looking at donkeys differently? We have had serious NGOs coming up and saying treat a donkey safely, treat a donkey better, but people basically look at a donkey as this animal, this beast. It's this thing that you can beat. It needs to run faster, beat it. You don't need to take it to a vet. You don't need to do anything about it. Can that change in this Kenya? It's 9:30. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, the Southern Bypass now, where you can join between Karen and Langata Road. Not so easy this morning. There seems to be some heightened levels of traffic there. All right, trying to cross the city today has caused a lot of problems for a lot of people because there's been traffic all around. However, that seems to have reduced over time. Mombasa Road, that was giving up some terrible vibes, at least you can move a lot more smoothly along Mombasa Road now. That's what it looks like around the city. Basically, now people are able to get where they're going. The morning was quite a sweat-worthy activity, wasn't it, with traffic? But now looking all right.
How are you?
Breathing life into the 80s. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So in this final hour of the Situation Room this week, we're discussing donkeys and what has become of donkeys. So the alarm has been raised very many times that we may have an extinction of donkeys in the country by 2023. This is just 10 years. We've been warned. In the next 3 years, we may not have donkeys. This is why in 2009, during that last population census, the number of donkeys was registered to be 1.8 million around the country. In the last population census of last year, that number has dropped to 600,000. And we can attribute this to very many things. Among them, of course, the way people steal donkeys and they go and slaughter them and sell them unscrupulously in our butcheries. But also because we licensed operation of donkeys slaughterhouses in the country. In 2004, we have 4 slaughterhouses in Turkana, in Machakos, in Nakuru, and in other parts of the country where those have been allowed to slaughter donkeys, process their meat, process the product for export and for domestic consumption where necessary and where possible. A lot of this, of course, is going to the international market. If we have an extinction of donkeys in the country, what does that mean for us? Is it possible then for us to look at donkey in a different way? Look at how we treat donkeys and dogs. Even an insult. One of the bad insults that somebody can insult you is calling you a donkey. Punda wewe.
Or a dog.
Or that dog, right?
Umbwa wewe.
Umbwa, right? It's because of how we as a society, look at donkey and treat donkey. But now here is one situation where the donkey is becoming a serious source of revenue for very many people. Could we look at it differently and start treating donkeys differently and treating donkeys better? Coming up with, for example, ways in which you can breed donkeys and start selling, this high-grade donkey that you can buy and keep in your house for zero grazing, not house, home.
Right.
Zero grazing a donkey.
Yes, you can.
To get to the point where now they're being regarded like we do with cattle.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And saying that is actually something that could be quite so.
And looking at all the products, now you can start selling donkey milk. Gone too far?
Well.
No, you haven't gone too far.
Do you just think?
Well, it's unusual that you should think of donkey milk. I mean, the story of camel milk. You think camel milk, okay. Well, this is us reacting to something that we've never probably had time to think or interrogate. And now you're being faced with it. And you're thinking, okay, it's a change. The reaction is to this need to change what we've considered as normal to something else. But the answer to your question is a definite yes. You can. You actually can. If you can change people's mind to do something that some had sworn they would never do or thought they would never do.
Like what?
I'm thinking politically. I always think politically. If in 2002 you could get the almost entire Luo community to vote for a Kikuyu president, it was hitherto thought
impossible.
Sorry, not possible. We are now in 2020, and we have people from central Kenya led by the governor for Kirinyaga saying, Raila Odinga. Now, again, would have said unheard of, unthinkable. It was unthinkable that you could get a Kikuyu president working with somebody from Kalenjin land. It is possible. So, getting people to change their minds in this country, it's possible.
Or even, change their minds or see something in a way that they never saw it before.
Look at things differently.
Look at things totally differently. It's absolutely possible for that to happen.
It depends a lot on how we package that information.
There you
go.
go.
For example, we start talking about packaging donkey milk. Unless you come up and start telling people, now it's a health fad. Start telling them this one contains something that helps your bones.
Don't even start with the milk.
Start with the meat.
No, start with the nutrition and what it encompasses, and then talk about where it's found in abundance. For instance, why do people like avocado? Because you've been told this one has X, Y, Z.
Good fats.
Oil. Exactly. Why do you think, for instance, people want to eat eggs? Because they were told that's it. You start with the nutrition aspect. Then you mention the sauce. It becomes easy. You start with the sauce.
Forget, there's nothing you will say after that.
Donkey milk.
No, they tell you, okay, it's okay. Fine.
There's a new kind of milk, however.
Yes, there's something else that we can. Yes,
we can take
There's
soya
a new
milk.
kind of milk, however,
Yes.
and it contains 1, 2, 3, and it can help you in 1, 2, 3 other ways. It comes from a donkey. However,
there are others. I mean, you're able to compare. We'll talk about camel. Don't throw donkey as the only alternative.
No.
Throw in others and so forth. Camel, elephant. And I'm joking.
Elephant, you're now going into the illegal realm. Right? You can't see that. Huh? There was a story about
yes,
a place in Kiambu where somebody has opened up a kiosk and they're making soup. And what are they using? They're using camel bones, camel hooves and something like that. And it's said to be seriously being sought after because it contains some values, especially values that are good for men. Somewhere up in Kiambu.
I see. It helps with the national anthem.
Yes.
The saluting or the singing of it, or both.
Or both. The hoisting of the flag. As well.
Okay.
And people in Kikuyu land,
Yes.
where, if you went and told them about camels, they'll be like, really? Camel milk, camel meat, camel soup? No way. Now, because of the value that they were told, this thing, it has value. It has some serious value that you get and benefits that you get. Now they consume it. Same communication we talk about donkey milk and donkey meat. donkey choma, donkey ears, donkey sausages, donkey burger.
You know, this is something I found interesting. There was a time we were making a trip to Mount Kenya and we stopped in Karatina. And there was a lady who was selling some green herbal-looking things in a very clean package. And she told us about the benefits of these things. And I was staring into space. So she came to me and said, in Kiswahili, Mzee, kwanza hii inaweza kusaidia sana.
Okay.
You looked
Then
at
you
her.
listened.
I looked at her and I smiled. I want to continue the conversation, but I figured I'd heard. I told her, thank you very much. But I was thinking, this van is full of people. Why are you picking on me? There it is.
Producer John is telling me of a story. Somebody who bought cockroach milk.
Okay, just stop it now, you guys.
Cockroach.
I mean, no,
Cockroach.
because now we're going to start asking many questions.
What are
We're
the
talking
benefits?
about
What are the benefits of consuming cockroach? You see
how much
how
milk
long,
are you getting out of a cockroach?
How
Where are
long-
you finding? You see,
How are you milking a
I
cockroach?
understand that we need to. Do you see? What are we talking? Get out of here! I mean, I don't even. No.
Somebody bought it and they believed that this is cockroach milk.
You know that falls in
And the
realm.
benefit of it is how long you need to live. You see, how long does a cockroach live? How difficult is it to kill a cockroach?
You stamp the thing out.
This is how.
First of all,
Consume this thing.
Take your mind to something a little more pleasant. For instance, we all know the values and the virtues of kuku kienyeji, so to speak. All right, the road runner.
Yes.
Okay, the worm-eating road runner.
Yes.
And the eggs. Now, do you know how they're sold? No, they're sold. Yeah, you go now. How not gonna cockroach lay eggs? And people buy and they're thinking,
Jogo. But you understand what that means?
No.
There was proper fertilization. There was actually a cockerel out there. It chased the road runner, caught up with the road runner, and they mated, and that's how we ended up having this kind of eggs.
So-
These are the things that I just put up in some cage somewhere.
That's not the real deal.
It's not as nutritious as an egg.
So changing a mindset then is absolutely possible. Changing
That's
a
very
mindset
possible.
and getting people to think in a certain way. And this can be, we can apply this to so many different things. So if we're looking at this today, because I mean, if you go up country, right, places that I've been, you see that people are using, just again, the donkey. It's transporting, food items to market. It's transporting water when they need it to go from place to place. There's so many things that it's not just a pet. It's a livelihood. And then now we're looking at, now we talk about value addition. We're looking at the hide and the beauty products that can be made out of it. So again, maybe something that above and beyond what it has been traditionally known for, there's a lot more that it actually can do. And I think this is the thing that we need to look at. And this could serve an example of how then you could get, communities and essentially governments to think about value add to certain things and say, okay, for something so simple that could have been seen as demeaning in the past, you could take it and you could actually value chain that we talked about yesterday. Do so much more from one product that you can actually get it to bring in, extra sources of income for you and change people's mindset in actually how things can be run. I mean, because like 5 years ago, were we talking about even goat milk? Were we talking about that? No.
Not much.
It was about
Camel milk
the
is
goat
now packaged and sold.
But
exactly.
think about it, something which people take for granted, the planting of maize. There are hybrid seeds that are available, and these have been developed by Kari. And for the longest time, there are many people who did not see the need. But see, this is where demonstration farms become useful.
Yeah.
Because you plant at the same time, there will be a willing farmer who said, let me try it out. Now, when you see from one particular stem or one stalk, and you can see how many cobs of maize come from that one, you need to see it once to realize this hybrid maize is actually better. The power of example often trumps everything else. Now, people may doubt it. Why am I saying this? When in the world of research, one of the biggest problems you have is the mind of the researcher and their understanding of it and believing that the research subjects may not understand what they have. Not what I've said. That's where the problem arises. But when you have conducted sufficient number of research projects, you will understand that it is not a question of them understanding. Just like you took time to understand it, if you took time to get them to understand, and usually there's a process. Don't start the project before you've actually asked. It's called, we're calling public participation. Ask them, this is what we want to do. What do you think would be the best way for us to do this? They will tell you. The very questions you would ask in the study, ask them. They'll give you a response. So when you analyze this information, you'll have a very clear path as to what to do, because they will have told you.
They would have told you.
And it will
you'll have
be
had buy-in.
Yes, it will be received well. So when you start, the likelihood of this thing tanking or going belly up is almost zero. And you will get information. But even then, when it comes to something where you want people to draw blood, people are reluctant. Blood, they are reluctant. And usually they will wait. There's usually a chart that you can tell. This is how it goes. It doesn't peak, then it moves. At some point it peaks.
It peaks.
Okay.
Because there's somebody.
Yes. After a while, they've seen there's no harm done. People are going and they're alive. So that's when you knew that there were myths and misconceptions within the community that were hindering people. And because no one has died and it was predicted they would, the myth is slowly being eroded. Then there'll be a plateau when many people come. Now, towards the end of a study, all those who had held back and who were, the naysayers, suddenly realize so many people have gone and nothing has happened. Then suddenly it spikes up completely. People now suddenly come in because they've realized that all the myths and misconceptions that they had were not true.
True.
Yes. So the next time one has a research project in such an area, it's easier. People have experience. Meaning, if you follow that methodology, it is not impossible to get people to understand how it is they can actually rear. When you come up with these World Bank type ideas, because somebody had a concept paper regarding donkey rearing in Malaysia, and then you want to bring it to Kenya, it'll go belly up.
Let's open up the phone lines 0719-012-600, as well as our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter. And the question is, would you start considering donkey as a cash animal, as a revenue earner? I was about to say as a cash cow.
Cash cow.
Donkey as a cash cow. Would you actually start looking at donkey as a revenue earner for the country and for families around the country? Donkeys are found everywhere. There's a huge demand and market for donkeys worldwide. Good morning. It's 9:45.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Breathing life into the 90s.
Everybody, what's up?
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
Mornings done right.
Nyama 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 ya punda. Kenneth in Malindi. Good morning, Kenneth.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good
Fine,
morning,
thank
Kenneth.
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I wanted to add or speak something to this Punda thing.
Yes.
Please.
Actually, where I am in Malindi, Punda is very important. Very, very important. We use it to kill, go to the river with, you know, and all that. And hakuna slaughter huku. I don't even think kwanza inaweza toleratiwa. Yeah.
But
Sikia kabisa.
would you see the people of Malindi now rearing donkeys, especially for that slaughter market? So you can rear them and then they'll be transported to the nearest one for you is in Machakos County.
People will grab any opportunity that seems like it will take them out of their poverty.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever idea you bring forth that seems like it is going to take them out of their poverty, people will jump to it.
Yeah.
Even this punda, yeah, ni vile nafikiri haijauzika huku. But if it is brought, I think, yeah,
people will jump.
People,
Kenneth, direct question to you. Would you take donkey meat and donkey milk?
No, yeah, milk, yes.
Milk, yes. Meat, no.
Anything that eats grass, I'll drink their meat. Even elephant, you laughed at Mr. City.
Yeah.
But even elephant, if you could go out down there and milk it for me, you have a customer.
Very good. Thank you very much. Have a good day in Malindi.
Yeah, you too. And then, this
Yes.
thing about questioning, yeah? City was talking about questioning things, yeah?
Yes.
Even question religion. See, there's this Jew that lived 2,000 years ago, Jesus. He was one guy who really questioned his own religion and how it was run, and sometimes whipping people because they are doing things the wrong way in places of religion. And I think he was even very, very controversial. People need to question things, question everything.
Thank
So that
you.
you have your own experience, your own knowing.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Let's cross over from Malindi and go to Kisumu. Norman, good morning.
Good morning, the station, Do, City, and Eric.
Good
Hi,
morning,
Norman.
Norman.
Yeah, now, Eric, do you think donkeys are still a bit of burden?
They are still a
therefore-
beast of burden across the country. You've just heard from Malindi.
Except for Lamu or Malindi, those areas. You know, nowadays I see there is piki everywhere.
Yep.
And I think, they are important in some areas, but things have been overtaken by the modern technology, the piki and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But, in the past, people never used to take these donkeys. Don't you think it is indoctrination by the media from maybe China or that made them to change their minds suddenly and start consuming donkeys? Yeah, it could be, isn't it?
It's possible, yes. But you're talking about Kenyan people being indoctrinated by the Chinese media.
To eat the donkeys.
Yeah, because Africans we watch the outside content more than the local content. So maybe somebody must have been convinced or indoctrinated to start practicing whatever they never used to practice due to the influence of the networks, the foreign networks.
But Norman, can I ask you a question? What would you say if I told you there have been communities in this country where they've been eating donkeys for the longest time? It's just that the government had not declared it as a food item.
But you said that these donkeys are mainly for export market. They are not consumed locally.
They are also consumed
they are.
locally.
We have 4 slaughterhouses in the country for them.
Okay, so the solution could be maybe the government, our government knows very well how to set up commissions and such things.
and task forces.
And task forces. So they could just start a conservancy specifically for donkeys and such threatened species. That could work well. Instead,
Thank you very much, Norman.
Okay.
Asante sana. 0719-012-600. Norman seems to think, well, donkeys...
Let's keep off.
There's certain caliber of people who want to eat donkeys is fine. In terms of the modern day, in fact, in his thinking, donkeys have just been overtaken by events. Now we have piki-pikis. We have tuk-tuks that can carry, mizigo. We have tractors that can pull the plow.
He does have a point, but there are places that have had piki-pikis for the longest time, but they still use donkeys. Even if it doesn't matter what we do, you will not find piki-pikis everywhere.
True.
And there are places that a piki-piki can't go, a donkey can.
A donkey will.
Yeah, donkey will go, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So donkeys are still being used. And one thing about donkeys is that anywhere, any part of the country that you go to in this country, you will find a donkey.
Actually, you're right. There is actually no part of the country that someone can tell you cannot find a donkey.
So you can actually set up Dr. Ruto in this farm of his in Taveta. He can segregate some 200 acres and just rear donkeys. See, he's putting livestock there.
In terms of conservation and preservation, absolutely. You would say that something like
Just
this could
rear
actually
donkeys,
happen.
And
apply for a license,
And donkeys
get an
get
abattoir.
along well with cattle.
Yes,
Yes,
they
they
live.
do.
Yeah, they do.
They live alongside all other animals.
They do
Well, apart
actually.
from
Lions.
those are the only ones, because hyenas will not go close to a donkey. Phone lines are still open 0719-012-600. We're talking about donkeys.
Yes.
And the population of donkeys has drastically reduced by 2/3 in the last 10 years. Population dropping from 1.8 million in 2009 to 600,000 in 2019. And this is also as a result of the classification of donkey meat as a food item. Donkeys are being classified as food animals. So we have seen the establishment of only 4 abattoirs in the country. And yet we've had donkeys everywhere. Should we start looking at donkeys differently? This can be a source of revenue for very many families. Those that look at a donkey and see, I only need 1 punda. You can actually now put up a donkey farm and you'll be able to sell them. You'll be able to sell them for export. There's serious market for it, as we can see with the drop in population. You'll be able to sell their meat. You can even open a donkey butchery where you start, people come to buy meat. We see these things with pork all the time. You have serious pork centers. It's actually called a pork center, not just a butchery. It's pork center.
Bouge it up a little bit.
The one sign that actually made me happy was when I was traveling on my way to Nakuru. They clearly indicated pork meat.
Yes.
I said, okay.
Yes,
Pork
here we go.
meat. It's pork meat. You can have it however you want. It's a possibility that we can turn these things around and start be looking at donkeys as, instead of allowing them to go to extinction, turn around the tide.
Exactly, and I think this is something that wouldn't hurt, because again, you're asking yourself, okay, so what? But here it is, that something that actually is good for the country. In whatever degree you want to look at it, it's something that's good for the country. And you say, okay, yeah, this is something that you can then now apply, value to, and say, yes, why not? Because it's something that could then go across the board, and you could get, definite funding from it. You could do so many things with it. I mean, it's versatile enough as a product then for you to be able to use in very many,
For the longest
so
time
why
in this
not?
country, people used to have, just flower gardens. So you just find somebody with a few roses at the backyard. Very beautiful. Never used to consider it as a crop for trade. Now, floriculture is a big business.
Right.
Same thing. We have a market for donkeys. It's there. It's ready. We have infrastructure and legal framework for ensuring that you are able to sell these donkeys and they get to be exported. Why not just advocate and increase and look at donkey differently?
Consider even something very simple, trees. We've always had trees. People plant trees, they cut trees. But it's now been understood this is a business.
Yes.
You can actually grow trees specifically for
business.
business purposes. And whatever acreage you have can actually be used for that purpose. It can be whether it is for commercial purposes, whether it's just for firewood.
Yep.
But there is a market for wood.
There's commercial use.
And every aspect, the broad spectrum of commercial use of wood products, it's available. Now, if you sell it right, remember, you need to be able to ensure that the people you're selling it to are in agreement with you before you even start selling it.
Right.
Yes. If you start before you've understood their fears, conceptions, misconceptions, you will eat that meat yourself.
What's happening right now around the country is the Ministry of Agriculture is actually taking a policy through public participation. This is the livestock policy. So the livestock policy, of course, looks at what is it that we need to do as a government to ensure the growth and development of the livestock sector. And most of it, if you look at it, they'll tell you about meat, beef, and milk. And then you look at sheep and goats, and you'll have a bit of camels, and then we'll go into things like fisheries as well. But the element of donkey, not really considered as a big issue. And I think this also should be included in the livestock policy, so that donkeys are considered part of livestock that can get government protection, that can get government support in growing this as an industry, growing this.
And even government buy-in as well.
Yes, totally. Kenya Agriculture and Livestock Research Organization, CARO, should be doing the same way you're talking about those farms around the country where they have this. Do the same. Go and rear a couple of donkeys in this particular region. In fact, you may find out that the donkeys you find in Lamu, of course, those ones are a bit smaller, so could be a different breed from those that you find in Malindi. Could be a different breed from what you find in...
But Eric, in fact, let's talk about cows for a second, even as we come to a close. For the longest period of time, we've always had cattle. but they were not known to produce copious amounts of milk. So over time, the government has insisted and has tried to introduce the sort of cows that would do this. So what they would do, they would have centers.
Yes.
Where where you can actually go and you can understand. In some cases, they would even get donor assistance where communities, groups of people would be given the sort of cow, the sort of that they intended to bring, so that you could understand what is done with it. And why do you think the milk production in this country increased? It's because there was a concerted effort to ensure that the breed of cattle that can produce this sort of milk was available.
Was available.
Yes,
around the country. Let's come to the conclusion.
The same thing can be done with the donkeys.
Yes. 31st of January 2019. Tonight, something is happening. DJ Nijo and DJ Pinye. And this is what we're calling the playback, supported by, of course, Spice FM. And this is happening where, again? Tell them, everybody.
At the Lavington Mall?
Yes.
Club.
It's called the Gossip Lounge this evening. Anytime from, what time again, John? Shall we be there? Us guys are getting there earlier. From 8 p.m., but you'll find us there because we'll be there from 6 o'clock, of course, waiting for everybody else to come in. From 8 p.m. tonight, Gossip Lounge, playback, DJ Pinye, DJ Nijo, looking back at all that music. Of course, yesterday they were here and they were playing on Spice Drive with Monique. She'll be talking about that again. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock. Have a great weekend.
Spice up your life.